Coming up on today's show, we have lots of Star Wars titles to talk about, and Brian Shea from Game Informer is here to talk about Pokémon Legends Arceus. What's good, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the What's Good Games podcast, your source for video game news, commentary, analysis, and funny stuff every Friday. I'm one of your hosts, Brittany Brombacher, alongside Brian Shea, senior editor of Game Informer and host of All Things Nintendo podcast. Hello.
Hi, thanks for having me, Britt.
Thanks for coming on. This is going to be fun. I feel like, besides the past 20 minutes when we were getting everything set up, I haven't seen you or talked to you in literal years, because it has been.
Maybe E3 2019?
At the FIG? The FIG was under construction, wasn't it, at that point?
Well, I think that was the first year the FIG was back, and it was kind of a different scene, so most people just default back to the JW.
Yeah. Oh, man, I miss those days. How have you been?
I got a taste of that, though. I went to the Game Awards.
Oh, that's
and
right.
It was like family reunion vibes. It was so great. Everybody, because it was all of the E3 JW Marriott nights that everybody always looks forward to, after the show is over, crammed into one night. So everybody was just going crazy. It was awesome.
I know Andrea got to go, and I could have went.
I did see Andrea.
I regret not going, but I just couldn't swing it. When you have a little tiny human that's dependent on you, it's kind of a little hurdle to get past. But it looked like such a good time.
The advantages of being forever alone.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I miss those days sometimes, so it's okay. Grass is always greener on the other side. But man, how have you been?
Pretty good.
Yeah.
It's the past couple of years been a kind of roller coaster of ups and downs, but overall, I'm doing pretty well.
I know. Well, you look great. I've been seeing you, promoting all your cool Game Informer shit all over the place. You're kicking ass. We're thriving despite the world kind of being on fire. We're thriving, right? Right?
Yeah, we're thriving, and the world is thriving. I don't know, firing.
Thriving while on fire.
We're off the rails. I'm gonna have a drink as well.
Oh no, cheers! No, this is gonna be great. So we were also talking about whiskey, my friends, and you made yourself a very impressive beverage. If you're not on YouTube.com/whatsgoodgames, you are missing. This is a sexy beverage. What do you want to tell us about it?
It is an old fashioned, and
it looks really fancy though.
Yeah, so it's a recipe that I kind of cracked over the course of the pandemic of my favorite restaurant here in Minneapolis. They have a really amazing old fashioned. I was like, well, I can't go there because it's the early stages of the pandemic when restaurants were just closed or doing takeout. So it was there was no alcohol sales. So I was like, all right, well, I'm going to learn how to make this. So I started iterating on it over and over and over again. And then eventually I actually found that they started selling recipe cards for their old fashions, and they would sell cocktail kits as a way to because they have such a good reputation for their old fashioned. So I looked up what was in it and found the exact liquor that they use. So I bought the bourbon and the rye whiskey and the different bitters that they use. So, and then I made my own simple syrup, and of course got to finish off with the orange peel and the cherries.
See, you are just fancy. You are just so fancy. Here I am with my poured Basil Hayden in my Maker's Mark glass. This is how fancy I am. And then here you are. But no, it's lovely to have another bourbon drinker on here. It's almost like Andrea's here. But we have a lot to talk about this episode. And I am so excited you're here because you can talk to us all about Pokemon Legends. Okay, is it Arceus or Arceus? How do you say it?
Arceus.
Is it Arceus? And is that right?
It took me the longest time to retrain my brain.
Okay.
Because I had never heard them say it officially out loud. I guess I fell off of if they ever mentioned it on the anime, I fell off of the anime before that. So I was always saying Arceus. Before they announced this game. I thought it was a soft C. And then the thing came out and I was doing a live stream. I was like, oh my God, it's Pokemon Legends Arceus. And then the voiceover less than a second later was Pokemon Legends Arceus. And it's oh, that's going to take some getting used to.
That's funny. So, I never knew that either. Yeah. I always thought it was Arceus, or I thought it was Arceus, but you thought it was Arceus. See, here's the thing. There's just so many ways to pronounce these dang old Pokemon names. You know what I mean?
That's why they need to add voice acting to these games finally.
Oh, I'm so excited to rant. Sorry, I shouldn't have said. No, I'm excited to hear your thoughts. I just have so much pent up frustration about this franchise, and I love it so much. I'm just so anxious to get to it. But first, we got to get through the news. It's just the way of the world. But before we do that, I want to thank this month's Patreon producers: Chewy's Godson, Alex Rigopulos, David Iacolucci, Faris Attieh, Justin Foshee, Matthew Goderre, and Punkdefied. And thank you, new podcast reviewer, Rubik's Cubaudier, Rubik's Kubroa. I don't know how to say your name.
Kubodier.
Wait, serious? What the heck, Brian?
No, I don't think that's it.
No, it's fancy. I love it though. It sounds so much better. I'm like Kuboba, and you're like some fancy Kubandadwa.
Probably Kubadier.
Kubadier. Who knows? Who could say? Thank you so much for supporting our show. We love you and appreciate you. Now, Brian, are you a Star Wars fan?
I am.
Thank God. Okay, great. I'm so happy because okay, we'll get to it. All right, so Respawn Entertainment is currently developing multiple Star Wars IPs, including the next Jedi Fallen Order. This comes from Game Informer, a little website you might be familiar with.
Never heard of them.
Yeah, so it's like one little like third party. No one really listens.
Amateur hour.
Yeah. So the developer behind the Titanfall franchise, Apex Legends, and Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order is looking to expand upon the galaxy far, far away once again. EA and Lucasfilms dropped a press release this morning that announced Respawn Entertainment's upcoming Star Wars IPs. Multiple titles are in the works, including the next chapter in the Jedi Fallen Order universe, an FPS with Peter Hirschman, executive producer on the original Battlefronts, and a strategy game via a publishing collaboration with Bit Reactor. And then there's some press release shticks in there, and it goes on to say that, we have this other Star Wars title, Star Wars Eclipse, and we have the Ubisoft title as well. Now, Brian, as the Star Wars fan, there's so much going on, and there's just so much to talk about here. So how do you feel about this? Are you excited? Do you think EA is going to make it all work? Is it all
So here's the thing about Jedi Fallen Order. The first one, I think, was a really great game.
Mm-hmm.
However, there's a lot they could learn from that first game. I kind of look at it like how the Assassin's Creed franchise was, how the Uncharted franchise was, how, this may be controversial, how the Mass Effect franchise was, where they had a really great foundation with which to build on, and they hit it out of the park in the second entry. I think Assassin's Creed 2 was such a far leap forward for that franchise. Same thing with Uncharted 2. Like, Uncharted 1 was a good game. Uncharted 2 was one of the greatest games of that genre's history.
Agreed.
And I think that Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order was a very good foundation for this franchise that Respawn is building out. And I think that if they learn some lessons, like particularly with like regards to a little bit like the map navigation.
Oh my God, the map! For the love of God and all that is holy. I have never met a worse map in my life. I love the game myself. Even as someone who's not a Star Wars fan, I had a great time with it. But I remember that map. That's like the one thing that sticks out, which is not good.
No, that, and then there's a couple of enemy types that they weren't fun to fight. They were just downright annoying. But that was like a minor complaint, Sure. Like most of the time, the combat was phenomenal in that game. The puzzles were usually very good, but the map and like the constant sliding down slopes in that game was just...
Oh, that's that too, yeah. Oh, man.
If they can like just fine tune that a little bit, that game is destined for greatness. Like, they got so close on that first attempt, and that's more than you can say about most like great franchises. And I think Respawn has the talent, they have the passion, they have the experience now. I think that they're going to do something special with this game.
Absolutely agreed. And I saw on Twitter that you had tweeted out a fun bar moment with one Vince Zampella.
Yeah, so Vince Zampella, who's pretty much the head of Respawn, at one point the creator of Call of Duty, and now he's over at Respawn with EA. But he was waiting to get into the bar because everybody was having to show like Vax cards to get in, and Vince was directly ahead of me, and somebody walks past and they go, "Vince, you should make another Star Wars game," and he just kind of slyly looks at him and goes, "Who says we're not?" And then walked away. It was the smoothest thing I've ever witnessed.
Mic drop. I bet everybody around was like, "Oh, my goodness." Oh man, no, that's so funny. Vince is he's a funny, great guy. He's a good guy.
Yes.
So what do you think though about this first-person shooter Star Wars game?
Well, the original Battlefronts ruled. And I'll be honest, I came around on Battlefront 2, the DICE one, the most recent one that everybody loves to crap all over.
Yeah.
But they made a lot of improvements to that game. That's one of those games where you think about like titles that bounced back from just a really bad launch. Like, you immediately think of like the No Man's Skies of the world,
right.
Or trying to think of another example.
Final Fantasy 14 when it first launched.
Final Fantasy 14, perfect example. I don't know if Battlefront 2 is on that level, but it made a huge comeback. It is now a very competent, very good first-person shooter or whatever. I think you can play that in third person as well. I don't know. It's been a while since I played it, but by all accounts, it's a very good game now, and it's a good accounting of that series. However, I don't think it ever reached the level of acclaim, of love that those original Battlefront games got. So to have the guy who is in charge of those taking charge of this new first-person shooter franchise, with Vince probably overseeing it, I think that this has a great shot.
Yeah, as someone again like who has never really been the biggest Star Wars fan, it's just not that I don't enjoy my time with the series or the franchise. It's just like space shit is just never really. I'm more like give me a sword and a shield and a dragon. Like that's more my jam. It's almost like getting a little too much. Okay, so we have again this Quantic Dream one coming out. We have the shooter one coming out. We have Jedi Fallen Order 2 coming out. We have this Ubisoft thing coming out. Are you worried at all as a fan of the franchise of Star Wars fatigue? Do you think that's even possible? Are you like, that's a really stupid question? It will always sell cajillions no matter what it is.
I think it's a combination of all of those scenarios because I am a diehard Guitar Hero fan, so I know very well what oversaturation can do
Amen.
to a brand.
Yeah.
On the other hand, though, like if they're all really good quality, which is something that the Guitar Hero games were not, like some of those Guitar Hero games were total garbage and other ones were really great. But if you oversaturate and like people start to lose trust in a brand, then that's when you run into problems. As long as they continue to put like a high level of quality on all of these games, I don't think people are going to mind if you're getting like, 2 games a year or whatever it ends up being, 3 games a year, because we also have Lego Star Wars coming out in like a couple months, right? Which also, by the way, I was so over the Lego games, and this one has me like excited again because it looks like they're taking like the right steps to make those games feel good again, because they always felt like a game from like 2003.
Yes,
like with how they played and everything.
And how that game is so gorgeous too. The last time
really
I saw it was at E3 2019. Was that the
Yep, me too.
I remember being like, man, like yeah, the Lego games have always been fun, but they've never been these incredible experiences for me. They've always been like a good time, but I just remember being like, man, it's real pretty. This game is so pretty. Okay.
I remember they were like, hey, come see Lego Star Wars, and I was like, I got other stuff to do. It's E3. Like I want to see like a game I'm actually interested in.
Yeah.
And then they pulled me in, convinced me. I'm like, you know what, fine, I'll come in and see Lego Star Wars, whatever. It's like a 30-minute demo or whatever it was. And I came out being like, I'm really glad I saw that, because that was like the confidence booster that I needed to like get back into, because I played all the Lego Star Wars games back in the day, and I enjoyed them, but it's like, all right, I've been there, done that, same thing with like I'm a huge Marvel nerd, so it's like I played like as many of the Marvel games as possible, but then at a certain point I was like, all right, I get it. I don't need to play any more of these.
It's like, yeah, you're worried about the copy paste. Like you already know what to expect. You don't need to set aside 30 minutes of your time to go see it. But yeah, after I saw it as well, it's like stuck in my memory from that E3. I remember the textures.
Yes, so I'm excited for that. But it is. And I think that, again, as long as they keep up a level of quality, which I'm hoping now that there's a diverse group of studios, not just under the EA umbrella, like you said, there's Quantic Dream, there's Ubisoft, we're going to get more and more types of experiences. And hopefully that helps break up the fact that like we're getting so many games.
Agreed. And Javin Mather has a good question for us. What's an unexpected game genre that would be a great fit for Star Wars, and how would you make it work? So I think about this, and again, as someone who isn't super into Star Wars lore, like I love learning about the franchises and series that I normally wouldn't dabble in that much. And I think the best way for that is just a full-blown like, don't get mad at me, don't pull out the pitchforks, but a Mass Effect style RPG.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? And that's what I'm saying.
That's the dream.
Okay, that is the dream. Okay, good. It's not just me then. I don't want all the Star Wars nerds to come at me. But that's, and I think that's the best way for me to really get involved into something. It's like when Spider-Man came out on PS4 and I was able to learn about all the baddies and learn about like Spider-Man and and all that. That's the best way for me to really get introduced into something because it's fun for me. And I think if Star Wars can do something like that, and I'm wondering if that's kind of what we're going to get with Quantic Dreams game, or is it just going to be like a choice and consequence game? Who knows? Who could say? Hopefully not.
I think that you're onto something there, because I was starting to feel the Star Wars fatigue from like the movie standpoint. Like it all came back down to the quality stuff. Like I was all in with Force Awakens because I was like, all right, that's like a good like nostalgia boost while also introducing a new cast of characters, which seems to be like the way that you revitalize like a series, right? Like we saw it with Ghostbusters, we saw it with Star Wars, we've seen it with all kinds of different Marvel properties. They accomplished that, I think, pretty aptly with Force Awakens. Then we got to The Last Jedi, which I liked a lot about that movie, but it was still like, it's kind of like a little too subversive for like the warm blanket of nostalgia that is Star Wars for me. And then we got to Rise of Skywalker, and it was just, I could not stand that movie. I was like, I hated that movie so much. I wish that it made me wish we could just do a do-over on the sequel trilogy, but I know we can't.
Oh no. Pull out the little Men in Black like thing that erases your memory.
Exactly. Nobody remembers this happened.
Yeah.
That's what the final scene of that movie should have been. It's just like Will Smith and what's his face?
I don't know. I know
Tommy Lee Jones.
Yes, they just like
walk
pop
out with
up.
the thing, and that's how it's Rey standing on Tatooine, and what's your name, Rey? Rey who? And then suddenly,
and that's it.
And then it's like, oh, I can't wait for the Star Wars Episode 7.
Oh no, yeah. See?
But The Mandalorian. That was a perfect way to get me back into it. And the structure of that show was so video gamey of like, all right, every episode he has a different mission. And it's like, all right, he's got to go to this planet and do this mission. And it's basically a standalone mission every single time, like a video game would be, like Mass Effect. But then every episode, you're also getting this little piece, this little taste of an overarching narrative. And when that is kind of like doled out in that manner where you're completing these missions that seem like they're disjointed, they're not a part of this overarching narrative, and then it all comes together, that's what really got me back into it. And then of course, especially season 2, they sprinkle in all kinds of nostalgia and like fan service and everything. I think that's the perfect approach. I mean, we're getting the KOTOR remake as well as we're talking about like other Star Wars games that are coming. I think that, we could, if somebody could pull that off. I don't know, like I know that there's been a lot of talk about what BioWare magic even means at this point.
Yeah.
But like if they could pull off that style of Star Wars game, I think that would be amazing.
I said, oh God. Yeah, because I am right there with you, because I just saw a video from, here we go, former Dragon Age producer. Let me get his name. Mark. Is it Mark? Mark Dara. Yeah.
Mark Dara.
Yeah. And did you see this as well? And
I did.
Yeah. He made a whole video about BioWare magic and how it's essentially just really bad project management and execution.
Yeah.
So when you said that, I was like, oh crap, because I love using that term because it is. BioWare has that thing about him. But anyway, so I've never played KOTOR, so maybe that's like the route I need to like kind of like lean into when it comes to,
especially if you haven't gotten it spoiled for you.
I haven't. No, and that's the thing is I know
be vigilant.
Okay, I will say if any of you fuckers spoil this for me on purpose, I will find you and I will slap your wrist. I'm looking at you, person who spoiled Tilu too for me. You bastard.
Oh no, I got Force Awakens spoiled for me, so I feel your pain.
See, some people, man, they get off on sick shit. Anyway, if you're a fan of the war that's taking place in the stars, good news, friends. You have lots of games coming your way. I think this is great. We were all kind of worried there for a bit that we knew EA had the exclusivity license for, was it 10 years, I think, right? And
oh God, has it been that long?
I think we're getting to the end of that licensing agreement.
God.
And we with like visceral games and it's been a hot mess, but hopefully, a nice corner has been turned and good things await on our horizon. So
and it's a whole different world, because like at the start of this 10-year agreement, there wasn't like a ton of interest behind Star Wars. I mean, it was always like a very popular brand and everything, but I feel like we've had an entire like injection of interest into it with the new trilogy, with all the TV shows and everything. I think that it's a whole new world. The Star Wars brand is kind of doing like amazing things, and they're investing a lot more into it. I think that Disney's a large part of that, where they're like, hey, we spent all this money on this enormous brand. Let's do more with it. And part of that is getting LucasArts or Lucasfilm Games or whatever they ended up calling themselves now back in the game, So like, I think it's good that it's getting out to other studios.
Absolutely. And you know what? I'm just going to give all of the credit to one John Drake. Thanks, John.
Hell yeah, John.
Thanks, John. You're the best. All right, moving on. Are you a fan of the Yakuza games, Ryan?
I am. Fairly recent convert. I got in with Yakuza 0.
Oh, that's how I got it too. Oh my God. You were here on a perfect week. So let's talk a little bit about Yakuza, because whenever I do, I love Andrea to death, but she just kind of stares at me with glassy eyes. And I'm admittedly a little over the top when it comes to this franchise, but it's okay. All right, so this comes from Game Informer as well. Yakuza creator Toshihiro Nagoshi's new NetEase studio revealed. Yakuza creator Toshihiro Nagoshi announced last October that he was departing from Sega, and today his new NetEase studio, aptly called Nagoshi Studio, has been revealed. Twitter user Nibelian, how do you say it?
I have no idea. I was hoping you knew.
Nibelion, sounds like a Pokemon, perhaps well known as Nibel. Everyone knows Nibel on Twitter. Posted a link to the Nagoshi Studio website where they learned that Nagoshi is its CEO. It is also where Nibel discovered that 8 of the founding Nagoshi Studio members previously worked at Sega or Yakuza developer RGG Studio. This is where Nagoshi previously worked before taking an executive role with Sega. Nibel notes that in an interview with Japanese gaming magazine Famitsu, Nagoshi explains that he left Sega because he didn't want to do the same thing repeatedly. At NetEase, there are fewer creative constraints on him, plus it allows him to be closer to actual game development again. In that same interview, Nagoshi said the studio hopes to announce its first game as soon as possible and that said game will have a large scale. The CEO also says that the studio is focused on quality and appealing to both core fans and a larger audience while doing things he and the other developers there couldn't do before. Okay, so this is kind of interesting. So I was looking into this, and so Nagoshi is obviously CEO of Nagoshi Studios, like no surprise there, right? But he's also joined by Daisuke Sato, who is the previous head of RGG Studios for 9 years. And others, And the other 7 members are artists, programmers, game designers, more artists, a director. Like, this is a lot. This is a big chunk of this studio that has followed him. And, I love Yakuza near and dear. And, just a couple of years ago, Brian, is how I got my intro. I also started with Yakuza 0. It was at the beginning of the pandemic, and I think I had COVID from PAX East 2020. I was very, very sick.
Oh, no.
I was on my ass, and I was like, you know what? Like, something like Yakuza sounds good. So I started with 0, and I binged the entire series in 2 months, like Yakuza 0 through 7.
Oh, my God.
Oh, yeah, man. I became literally obsessed with it.
I thought about doing that, but, I got through 0 and Kiwami, and I was like, I think I need a break. I need to play something else. I just haven't gotten back to it, unfortunately. I started Kiwami 2, and I made it about halfway through Like a Dragon. I love Like a Dragon, but it's it's so hard to stick with one singular game. Especially during the holiday review season, it's I've got to jump to this, and I've got to try this, I've got to do this, and it's very difficult to stay focused on something if you're not assigned to it.
Yes, I totally know what you mean. No, I am a feral rabbit fan, and it was something I've never done before, but I literally became obsessed with it.
That's awesome.
Which is great. I love it so much. So we got a question here from Mr. Yasman, who says, what do you think the new game from the creator of Yakuza is going to make? Is it going to be something in the vein of Yakuza Judgment or something new? And, as much as I want to say, it's going to be something like Yakuza or Judgment, that's not necessary because RGG is still working on, those games, right? I think what I'm just most excited about is seeing how much of this is a very talented studio, what they come up with. I hope it's something entirely different. You hear, and you've talked to a lot of developers too, Brian. A lot of folks say you get fatigue after a while. I think about those poor folks that work on Call of Duty. It's kind of the same thing over and over again. I even know with Larian doing Divinity Original Sin and Divinity in general, they get to work on Baldur's Gate now, and that was a dream for them. There comes a fatigue at some point. And so I hope, this is something that maybe lights a new fire under their asses. I just hope it kind of has some of that silly charm to it. They're just so good at making those gangster type games, and I love that they have that wit about it. It's this super serious crime drama, but yet you have all these silly super side quests where you're finding panty thieves and shit. There's something magical about it. You know what I mean?
And he loves action movies. I did a piece on how the Yakuza series kind of broke through and became a bigger thing in the West. And Nagoshi and Sato were the 2 that I talked to, and Nagoshi is a diehard action movie fan, and he loves making games along those lines. He specifically mentioned the Kingsman movies,
really,
as this is the kind of action that I love. Yeah, I actually love those movies too. So I haven't seen the new one though, but it looks cool. But yeah, so I think that he's going to keep that action. So unless he wants to do something completely different, which who knows what he's thinking, because he takes this art very seriously. Like he is definitely like completely like all in on this as like an art form. So maybe he wants to scratch a different itch, which is entirely possible. But
Hmm.
I would be surprised if he did not like have some element of action and some of that kind of like zaniness that you were talking about, where like
Yes.
even though it's super serious on the main line, like that's what he was talking about again, is like he was like, all right, well, with Yakuza, like we always have the very serious, like kind of like a soap opera style of like drama as you play through like the main story. But if anybody wants a break from that, they can go off and like, you know, steal pornography for a kid or something like that from a
Yes.
convenience store. And that was something that he really liked, was that like it kind of like gave levity to a very serious, very heavy story that he recognized could take a toll on a player, you know, like it could really
Mm.
exhaust you if that's all you're seeing like over and over again is like these super serious storylines and characters that are like yelling at each other and everything. It's like, no, let's go steal a copy of Dragon Quest or whatever the game was that you had to steal for the kid.
Yeah,
Or
absolutely.
like you said, panty thieves, or like infiltrate a cult, or like help the
Yes.
weird guy in the underwear on the, on
Oh, the Mr. Oh God, was it Mr. Fuck? I don't know. Yeah, Mr. Boner, I think. Oh, Walking Erection was his name. Walking Erection. Oh my
So
God.
yeah, I would be surprised if he did something in the vein of Yakuza or Judgment, just because it seems like he wanted a change, and that's
Yeah.
why he left Sega and RGG to kind of go tackle a new thing altogether. But I would also be very surprised if it was not carrying over some of those elements.
Absolutely. And like we were saying too, Mr. Yasmin, RGG is working on a sequel to Like a Dragon, and they're also working on something unannounced that's outside of Yakuza in Judgment, which is just so exciting to me. It's so exciting. I mean, the fact that we have like seven, at least seven in the West, eight, I guess, if you want to include Dead Souls, Yakuza games, is we're very lucky to have those. So I can't complain that we didn't get enough of them if they decide to move on to something else. And obviously the Yarg continue down this path with Ichiban with Like a Dragon. Also, did you hear, Brian, that about the Judgment TV series that's
I
supposed to?
did.
Oh my
I didn't look
God!
too much into it, but I saw it and I was like, what? And like, it
Yeah,
has the same actor, right?
yeah. Takuya Kimura. Kimura is his name, and yeah, he'll be reprising his role as Yagami, which is incredible because that was the whole question for a long time, right? Like, is Judgment continuing because his talent agency didn't like the fact that if the games were to come on PC, that the mods could do weird things with him. I don't know. It was
Hmm.
something, but the fact that it's a rumor, I don't think it's been confirmed. I don't know. Either way, hey, I'm all about more Yakuza
Hey,
and Judgment.
you
Yeah.
can't mod a streaming TV series.
Or can you?
I guess you can. I mean, deep fakes or
Uh,
whatever.
yeah, I've recently been introduced to deepfakes courtesy of Andrea, and oh man, my mind is
Oh
blown.
no.
I mean, now she
Oh
hasn't
no.
shown me anything weird, thank God. But I know those things are out there, you sickos. And then finally, I thought this would be kind of a fun one to speculate on. The Rock is making another video game movie. This comes from IGN. So Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson is working on another video game movie. During an interview with Men's Journal, the 49-year-old former professional wrestler revealed that he's set to star in another video game adaptation. Quote, "I can't tell you which game in particular we're doing, but there will be an announcement this year. We're going to bring one of the biggest, most badass games to the screen, one that I've played for years." And then it goes on to talk about how he
Hmm.
was in Doom, which I actually like that movie. I know it did terribly. It even says in here it stands at 18% of Rotten Tomatoes and earned a quote rubbish 58.7 million at the box
Oh,
office.
rubbish.
A rubbish. He was in Rampage and obviously Jumanji. And he said he's really excited to bring it to fans around the world. And of course, we're going to do it right by our gamer friends. But really, we're just going to make a great movie. And his favorite game by himself that he likes to play? Madden. So, my first thought, okay, and I have an answer for this. Which video game IP stars big, muscular dudes in like the most supreme action, most run and gun? I think of Gears of War. I think, could The Rock be in a Gears of War movie? Maybe.
That was one of my guesses.
Okay. What else
I
you
was
got?
thinking it was either Gears of War, which I think is the front runner, right? Like I think that like Dave Bautista has expressed very vocal interest in playing Marcus Phoenix, which is perfect because he looks just like Marcus Phoenix.
That's true.
They're both WWE guys. It
Dude.
would make so much sense that they would both be in a Gears of War movie. However,
Oh.
I also thought maybe Call of Duty. I don't know
Oh.
what. It would be way too soon for Microsoft to have any say in that. Like now that they've purchased Activision,
Activision.
but Activision, I did see that as your, your thing last month or last week. Um, I don't think that's going to be the result of any kind of Microsoft initiative because it's just way too soon for that, and it's not even an official thing yet.
Sure.
However, if you think like the biggest, baddest game franchises out there, like if you're not even like that diehard of a gamer, you know Call of Duty. You know, like
Yeah.
that's like one of the household names of gaming. And I could see how someone like The Rock would see that and be like, "Oh, that's one of the most badass things out there." Like, you know, even though you know, people have had their problems with the Call of Duty franchise ever since like the Modern Warfare games. But yeah, I think Gears of War is probably the front runner. I also thought maybe Fortnite, just because he is in Fortnite.
Oh,
He's
wow.
already in that game.
Okay.
So I don't know. But
That's
he's saying like he's
hmm.
played it for years and years and years. So I think it's probably Gears of War if I had to
I
venture a
hope.
guess.
I think those are really good guesses. I do hope it's Gears of War because I mean, a Call of Duty movie. Well, it makes sense. I feel like, listen, there are so many war movies out there. Do we need another World War II video game? Do we need another World War II movie? You know, if that's your jam, I'm sure you would love it, and that's awesome. But I think Gears, like, badass. I want to see a Lancer going through things and people and creatures, and to me, that sounds fun.
The only thing that I liked about that Doom movie, I am with you that I don't absolutely hate it. But the one thing that I actually really liked about it was the first person mode. That
Yes!
like at the end.
Yes,
Like I remember
exactly.
watching that with my friends in college, and we were just like kind of just sitting there like watching it completely stoically. And then it went into the first person sequence, and we were like, "Oh,
Yes! Yes, I was hoping that's what you were gonna say. That's when I think of the Doom movie, I think of that. Like, sure, it was like mildly entertaining and kind of creepy in points, but when it did that first person mode, that's when I was like, oh yeah, this is fucking awesome. I don't know,
they
people
did
are
it."
just haters. They did it, and I loved that. Oh my
And
god.
it's cheesy as all hell,
I know,
but
but
I had
it's
fun with that one scene.
see, like, there's a time and a place for cheese. You know, it's all
Yeah.
about those expectations, man. You got to go into a video game movie with proper expectations. But regardless, I think The Rock is a wonderful human. I mean, he's very entertaining to watch, if anything. So whatever he's in, hopefully it's Gears of War. I think that would just
That'd be great.
That would be sick. And we have a few in case you missed it. Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask is coming to Nintendo Switch Online Expansion Pass service in February, and Banjo-Kazooie was just added to the service. Brian, where do you stand on this whole Nintendo Switch Online N64 shenaniganry?
I wish the emulation was better.
Right?
I wish that it felt better on a pro controller,
Yes.
but I'm glad that they exist. However, I would much rather us have ports of Ocarina of Time 3D and Majora's Mask 3D than get the original N64 versions, especially with poor emulation.
Yeah, it's so tricky. I've wanted Ocarina. I say Ocarina. I can't help it. You can't erase like a habit I've had since 1998. It's just what it's going to be. Everyone gets mad at me because it's Ocarina. I know. I'm sorry.
I say Ocarina now because people corrected me and I retrained myself.
Oh, really?
And I don't know. I don't even know what's right anymore.
I don't know. Just go with what your gut says. That's what I say. Yeah, like I've always wanted it on Switch. I was saving a new playthrough for when it did come to Switch, and it came on Switch. And when I got that controller in my hand, Brian, I felt like I had never played a video game before because I could not get the controls down at all. It was so bad, and there's no remapping, and the lag was bad, and it just didn't look great. I know they just released an update to the emulation itself.
Oh, did they?
Yeah, like the back end stuff, which apparently fixes some of the issues, like the water. In Ocarina of Time when you're fighting Dark Link. I know that was a really popular example of something that just looked bad. But no, like I'm with you. I'm happy this exists. I just wish it was a little bit more well done, but it sounds like Nintendo hears us loud and clear. So hopefully we'll get more improvements to the service.
By the way, when this announcement happened, I made a list of all the Zelda games that are on Switch right now. And it is amazing how many Zelda games. Let me bring up this list real quick.
Hit me with it, man.
So, obviously, Breath of the Wild, Zelda 1, Zelda 2 from the NES catalog, Link's Awakening as a remake, A Link to the Past on the SNES catalog, Skyward Sword through the HD port, now Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, and then on top of that, Cadence of Hyrule.
Hot damn. I never stopped to think about that. Huh.
Now we just need the stupid Wind Waker and Twilight Princess HD ports, and then I'll take Link Between Worlds for good measure.
That's a good one. You know what I would really like to see though on there are the handheld
Minish Cap.
Yeah, like all those little like Game Boy titles that we didn't get.
The Oracle games.
Yes, yeah. I mean,
that's the thing is like I want the Game Boy catalog to be like the next like classic games catalog, just because that is such a perfect fusion of like we already have like the Switch as like this perfect console handheld fusion, so it's like, why shouldn't we have both console and handheld classic libraries?
I don't know, because they march to the beat of their own drum, Brian.
They really do.
You don't pay attention.
But that's what I hope we get like a Game Boy / Game Boy Advance classic catalog next.
I would love that, because I skipped a lot of those actually, because when I was a kid I was like, I don't want to play this on my handheld. Back in the day it wasn't, you had little Game Boy screens and it wasn't as nice as your shiny like 27-inch TV tube TV that you had back in those days. So I would love that, and I'd love to see all the old Pokemon games on there as well. Just like, hit us with it, Nintendo. Listen, we will give you our money. I will, at least.
We've shown it time and time again. I mean, I own
I know
12 copies of Ocarina of Time, so.
Oh my god, I know.
Including this one. Hey.
Oh, that's right. I wanted to do a little show and tell with you. So what are you holding in your hands?
This is a Japanese version of Ocarina of Time. Ocarina of Time, whatever we're going to say from this point on. I was in Tokyo visiting Game Freak in, I guess it was October 2019 or September 2019. And I was doing the cover story for Pokemon Sword and Shield, so I got to visit Game Freak and had a day where I could just go shopping, basically. So I went to some of the Japanese game stores, and I found Ocarina of Time.
It's so pretty. Can you hold it up again? Because I have the Western, and look how different these are. Like, look at that. Yours is so much cooler.
Apologies that it's very reflective, because I kept it in the wrap.
Flip it. I want to see the flip. Oh, different art and everything on the back. I'm just fascinated by the shit. Yeah, yours is way better. Way cooler than this.
I know.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing is, like, the Japanese game art or box arts were so much better back then. Now they've pretty much uniformed it. But I think I've made it a point that every time I go to Japan, I'm going to buy a different of one of like my favorite games. So for like the longest time, Ocarina of Time was my favorite game of all time, and I didn't think anything was ever going to unseat it. And then Breath of the Wild came out, and I was like, all right, this is kind of like Ocarina of Time 2.0.
See, you and I are going to have a conversation about this at some point, Brian, because my stance on Breath of the Wild is that it's a fantastic game. I would even go as far as to call it a masterpiece, but I don't think it's a great Zelda game. I would agree
with that, but it delivers so many of the core tenets that Zelda used to make me feel back in the N64 days in particular.
That's fair.
And that was that sense of discovery, that sense of wonder, the sense that anything could be around any corner at any time.
Absolutely. I totally
And that's what I felt with
there.
Ocarina of Time the first time I played it when I was a kid, and that's what I felt with Breath of the Wild as a man in his 30s.
Yeah, no, it's so interesting, because I agree with all of what you just said, and that's something I loved about Breath of the Wild, something I always try to like drill into Andrea. I was like, but there's something so cool about you never know when you're gonna find like a weird puzzle off to the side, or you think that's just a normal rock. Well, you lift it up, there might be something hidden underneath it, or maybe there's a treasure chest at the bottom of the lake. I love that sense of discovery. I think what I was just really missing was just like I love dungeons, I love the temples, I love like those big, like the castle, in my opinion, was the best part of that game, when you have that huge,
I love that.
Right? And that's what I felt. I was like, this is the Zelda that I really want anyway. We could be here.
No, there are two shortcomings that I will fully acknowledge for Breath of the Wild, and that is the lack of dungeons and the lack of variety in the boss fights.
Yes.
Other than that, I will defend that game to my grave.
To your grave, to your dying breath, you will defend Breath of the Wild. Okay, well, noted. It'll be, I know who we're having on the show then when Breath of the Wild 2 stuff starts coming out. This will be great. And finally,
I'm so excited.
Oh, it's going to be great. And finally, the last, in case you missed it, Blizzard is working on a PC survival game set in a whole new universe. Quote, Blizzard is embarking on our next quest. We are going on a journey to a whole new universe, home to a brand new survival game for PC and console. A place full of heroes we have yet to meet, stories yet to be told, and adventures yet to be lived. A vast realm of possibility waiting to be explored. So I tried clicking on this job listing, is I think where this came from, but it 404'd me, and it looks like it's been taken down. I don't know.
Uh-oh.
I don't know. Does this do anything for you at all?
I'll be honest, the only Blizzard game I've ever loved is Overwatch.
Okay.
and I have fallen off that recently just because there's been no content.
Oh.
So yeah, when they announced Overwatch 2, they pretty much transitioned like 99% of the team over to work on that game, which, whatever you want to do. However, with all the delays, it's like we've gotten no content for that game whatsoever, and it's really like put a damper on the community. And I mean, we've gotten like new skins for like events, but that's about it. But like no new heroes in years, no new maps in years, and it's really killed my enthusiasm for that. And then all the stuff with Activision Blizzard in recent months has really also kind of killed my enthusiasm for it.
Sure, sure.
You know what? I hope the game is amazing. Blizzard has a really talented team, and I think that if one studio announces a game and you can have faith that it's going to be good, Blizzard is pretty high up on that list.
Amen. Mic drop. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're talking all about Pokemon Legends. Arceus. Trying to think of the other ways you can pronounce it. I don't know. I am so fucking excited. We'll be right back. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the What's Good Games podcast. This is segment 2, where we talk about games we have been playing. And holy shit balls, Brian Shea, you have been playing Pokemon Legends, and I have not been as fortunate. So I am just like literally gonna sit back. I got my bottle of whiskey here, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm just gonna like bask in your talking about this game. So like hit us. Just go, baby, just go.
All right. So I guess we'll cut to the chase. I liked it. I thought it was a lot of fun. Okay. I think that it is a great foundation for what could be like a really interesting next, excuse the pun here, evolution of the Pokemon franchise.
Okay.
I think that they implemented some modernizations in some very smart ways, in particular with the UI. Like, when you're just going around in the open world or the open segments, sorry, it's not like a giant open world like Breath of the Wild, but it's like segmented
like
open
Monster
areas.
Hunter-y, right? Where it's like,
yeah.
Okay,
it's like, all right, I want to go to this biome. So you go to that biome. And then if you want to go to another one, you have to like kind of fast travel to it, And I think they did a great way, or a great smart implementation of controls and like user interface when you're just walking around, because you use the shoulder buttons to choose which item you want to throw, or you can press a face button and then it will transition you to choosing which Pokemon you want to throw out. So like, say you're walking around and you see a water Pokemon that you want to catch, you can choose to, a Magikarp. So there's a Magikarp that you want to catch, although that might not be the best one for the way that I'm going to explain this, but fine. Say, say you see a Magikarp, whatever.
Thank you.
And you want to catch it. So sneak up on it, and you can choose to sneak up on it and throw a Pokeball or throw an item to like kind of distract it. So like you can throw like food that that Pokemon likes, and while it's eating that, you can throw the Pokeball and catch it, and you don't have to wait to see what happens. You can just keep walking and then it'll tell you if you caught it or not, which is great. Like,
wow.
It does so many great things for like the flow of how you move through this world.
Okay.
But like, so you can sneak up on them that way, or you can just attack them head on by instead of selecting an item to throw at them, you can select a Pokemon to throw at them from your party of 6 that you have with you, and you throw it out, and it seamlessly transitions into a turn-based battle.
So when would you want to use one or the other?
I always preferred to at least try to throw the Pokeball stealthily.
Okay.
But as you get later in the game and you start coming across stronger and stronger Pokemon, that doesn't always work. So at the end, when I'm trying to think of like Pokemon that I can actually say are in the game without spoiling things.
Sure.
So say you came across like a really high level Pokemon and you wanted to try to sneak up on it, that might not work. And in that case, it could also go against you because they could also like run away. So like specific species are more like skittish, So like Starly, for example, it's like a tiny little bird Pokemon, almost like, I forget which generation it came from. It's one of like I want to say maybe Gen 4's Pidgey comparison, basically.
Right. Yeah.
So it's basically the Pidgey of that generation. It's either Gen 3 or Gen 4. I want to say Gen 4. But so it's very skittish. So like if you sneak up on it and you throw the Pokeball, that's going to be your best chance to catch it, because if you enter a battle or like you just run straight at it, there's a good chance it's going to fly away.
I see.
And
Okay.
other Pokemon, they actually like, if well, most of them actually, if you like go at them or they spot you, they will just outright attack you, which there's not a whole lot of risk reward in those types, because if it spots you, it's like, all right, well, I'm just going to throw a Pokemon out now. And then it immediately transitions to the turn-based battles. And in that case, I always try stealthily first. But like the downside to that is you'll lose that Pokeball if you miss the throw, or you it fails. Like if it breaks loose, you're not gonna retain that Pokeball, which sometimes that's valuable. I very rarely felt like I was like at a loss for like Pokeballs. Like
Okay.
I almost always had a surplus.
Okay. Oh my gosh. So many questions. So many questions. I want to go back to what you said earlier, was that you felt like this was a good, and I love that you said it, evolution, kind of for like what can be. And that was kind of the thing I've been wondering about since this announcement, and I guess for Pokemon games for a long time, right? It's always felt like this is a good step forward, but it's just almost like some foreplay, right? Like we know what this could be, we know what this really could look like. And so is this truly like a really good step forward, or is it more of like a little tease than anything?
I think it's a good step forward.
Okay.
I think that they so having all of the areas be kind of like open world-ish, like they're all like kind of these mini open worlds. There's areas to explore, there's linear paths to destinations, but I say this in my review, but like the best times I had with Pokemon Legends Arceus or Arceus, God, I still haven't retrained my brain fully, I guess. Arceus is when I explored off the beaten path. And you find like a little nooks and crannies that have different species that you've never even seen in the game before, and you can catch them, or you find alpha Pokemon, which are really great. So those are these giant, really strong Pokemon. Their eyes are like glowing red, and they're like larger variants of other Pokemon that are in that area. So like, trying to think of another Pokemon I could talk about.
We've seen the Scyther evolution.
Say Onyx.
Okay,
Let's say Onyx.
Yeah.
So like there's a bunch of Onyx in this area, and then there's one giant Onyx, and you're like, oh man, I want to catch that one. So you can run at him, but he's going to have higher stats. He's going to be probably 20 or 30 levels higher than every other Pokemon in that area. So you're going to have to really like take it to him. If you're like on level for that area, it's going to be a really tough battle. But like if you catch him, like then you have this really powerful Pokemon on your team, or if you defeat him, you're going to get a ton of experience for that. So that's one of like the most rewarding things you can find in exploration. There's also a million requests that like just like villagers and like bulletin boards will give you, like just like you can take up like these side quests, and they range from like, hey, bring me this Pokemon, or like complete the Pokedex entry for this Pokemon, or even just like I need these resources to make a cake. So like you'll go and like find these 3 ingredients and like you'll bring it there. And there's some of them are really good rewards. Like it'll expand like the shop offerings everywhere.
Oh, that's good.
Like that's the best quest line, I think, in terms of like rewards. But then other ones are like, oh, you brought me these resources, here, have these other resources. And I was like, oh, why did I waste my time with this side quest?
And do you know what the rewards are going to be before you do them?
They usually will tell you, yes.
Oh, that's good to know.
Or they'll give you some vague thing of like for the general store quest line, it's like it just tells you like more shop offerings is the reward. It doesn't tell you like what, but like when you complete it, it's like really good shop offerings. So you want to do that as much as possible. And then there's other ones that again, they don't really feel worthwhile, but aside from my brain that tells me that if I have a checklist, I should do everything on that checklist, which is why maybe Ubisoft games like really appeal to me.
Ah, yes. I understand what you're saying. Okay.
But the Pokedex entry, the thing that I said there, that's one of the things that I really like about this game, because the whole point of like your initial mission, like as you progress through the story, you actually uncover like new mysteries and like new storylines and everything that actually become like the main story of this game. But your initial mission is to create the first ever Pokedex of this region, which came to be known as the Sinnoh region. Back then it was known as the Hisui region. So you're creating the first ever Pokedex, which it's funny to see like the technology that they were using back then, because the Pokeballs, which was a new invention in this game, are all wooden. They're not like the metal that we see in like the modern era games. And the Pokedex, instead of being like this digital tablet thing that you see in the games that take place modern day, it's like a notebook, like a
Oh,
really
that's
well bound
fun.
notebook. But because like this is the first ever Pokedex, when you catch a Pokemon, that does not like immediately fill out your Pokedex. You actually need to complete these various tasks with these Pokemon in order to fill it out. So basically, you want to
Oh.
reach research level 10 on each Pokemon to complete their Pokedex entry. And everything that you do with that Pokemon or that species will fill out the Pokedex even further until you reach that level 10. So catching several Pokemon can do it. So if you just want to be like, all right, I just want to catch 20 versions of this Pokemon, that might get you to level 10. Or you could catch two of them and that'll get you like 2 levels, or and then defeat them in battle. That'll give you additional levels. Use this one specific move or see them use this one specific move. Like
Mm.
see so and so use water gun 10 times or whatever. You can do that, whether it's you're fighting a Pokemon that's using water gun or you're using it yourself as that Pokemon, or you can like defeat this water Pokemon with electric type moves. Like that's one that you could have. So it's like,
That's good. So I feel like that kind of prevents fatigue when you're doing this kind of thing.
yes.
Okay.
And that also is why I often like using like the stealth approach for a lot of these things. Like, because that's a good way to really like skyrocket the number that you're catching, you know? So it's like,
Mm.
all right, I need to catch 10 to get the next point on like this Pokedex, or I could defeat it in battle 5 times or whatever. And it's like, all right, well, there's like 10 right here. Let me just sneak around this area like Agent 47, and instead of shooting them in the head with a silenced pistol, I'm throwing Pokeballs at them and like hoping nobody notices.
That's amazing. Do you have to complete the Pokedex? Is that a story requirement, or is it kind of just like a fun side thing you can do?
It is ultimately the final goal,
Okay.
but to roll credits, you do not have to.
Okay. Okay. Got it. Um, my mind is going 90 miles an hour. I feel like I have Jesus in
What
front of me, and I'm like, tell me the secrets of everything. I'm like, holy
I will
shit.
say what that particular mechanic does the best for me is that for so long, the Pokemon franchise, I mean, and I love the Pokemon franchise. Like, it
Same.
was my introduction to handheld gaming. It was my introduction to the RPG genre as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
I have such a great affection for this series. But in recent years, I think especially Pokemon Go was kind of like the pinnacle of this feeling. I have felt like it was just mindless collecting of these characters. Like, it's like, I'm never
Right.
going to use this Caterpie that I'm about to catch in battle. So, like, why am I doing it? Oh, because I haven't caught a Caterpie before. Or if I'm playing Pokemon Go, it's like, oh, because I still need like 10 Caterpie in order to evolve my Metapod into a Butterfree. And if you're not a Pokemon fan, I'm sorry, it sounds like I'm speaking a foreign
No,
language right
you're
now.
preaching. You're preaching right now, man. I get
But
it.
this makes it feel like more than just mindless collection. It feels like you're actually studying the Pokemon, even if some of the tasks do feel a little copy paste.
That's excellent, because I am the same boat as you. I will grind a patch of grass for hours to get that one rare, only to discover it's a common in a patch of grass like 5 hours from now. You know what I mean? That's just like,
By the way,
yeah,
there's no more random encounters.
none at all.
None. So you see all the Pokemon you're going to encounter, and most of the time, if you go back to like the same area, it's going to be the same Pokemon during that same time of day. Now, if you go back at night, a lot of those Pokemon are going to be replaced with ghost Pokemon.
Ooh,
But
okay, that's interesting.
the alpha Pokemon are almost always in the same place. So, like, if I go there, like, say that Alpha Onyx I really want to catch is there, and I accidentally kill him or make him faint. Sorry,
Yeah.
and so he does not. I don't catch him, right?
Uh-huh.
I can come back. Like I can fast travel out of there and then come back, and he'll be there again.
Oh, that's nice. Okay. Wow. So is this the first Pokemon game where there's no random? Because I know even in Sword and Shield, right, there were those patches of grass that you could get the random encounters.
Were there random encounters in the open areas or the wild areas? Sorry.
I think in the grass, weren't there? If you ran around the patches of grass, I thought so. Maybe. Oh no! What would happen is you would be running and you would get an exclamation point above you. That's what would happen. So yeah, it was random. That's interesting. See, I feel like that's a really good step forward, because that's like my dream Pokemon game. Is, again, like everyone says it. I'm just gonna echo it again, like Breath of the Wild-esque, where you had this huge map, all these very, very distinct biomes, and you see all of the Pokemon existing, scripted to do what Pokemon would do, whether it's eating, shitting, banging. I don't care. I just want to see the Pokemon.
Well, there's no shitting or banging, but they
Fuck.
are eating sometimes.
Okay, well, I'll take 1 out of 3. Fine, Nintendo, fine. But
You
that's
can even feed them.
you can't. To catch it, to be sneaky, right?
Yeah.
Okay, to throw your little wooden
Or
Pokeball.
I mean, you could just throw the food that you made or brought and just let them eat it peacefully.
So are you saying, Brian, that I could be walking around and I could see a Magikarp swimming in the water and just throw it food and let it be?
Yeah.
Oh my god. 10
You
out
don't
of 10.
have to throw a Pokeball.
I can just feed it. It could be like my little pet.
You can just feed it, yeah.
I think that's really cool that there's no random encounters. That makes me really happy. I mean, I understand, like, for me, like, the random encounters are fun, especially when you're trying to find, like, that one rare Pokemon, right? But I think for the series to really evolve, you just kind of got to get rid of that, even though I know it's a staple. I know a lot of people are going to be mad that that's gone. I think that's great, personally.
I think so, too. I think that was something that, like, even in, like, another traditional RPG, like Final Fantasy 13, I thought that was a good step forward, that there were no, like, at least not to my recollection, there were no random encounters, because you always saw the enemies kind of on the map, and then they carried that forward, obviously, with 15. But I think that's a really good modernization that a lot of RPG franchises should start doing more of.
Agreed.
At least in my opinion. I'm sure there are people that disagree, and I'm sure I'm going to receive all kinds of hate in your YouTube comments,
no, man,
but whatever.
As someone who just replayed Final Fantasy IX, one of my favorite games of all time, those random battles are a bitch. So, like, I'm all for it.
10 is the same way for me.
Oh, man. So, speaking of modernization, this game does not have voice acting, correct?
Correct.
How does that feel when you're playing
it? Feels like a relic of the late 90s,
okay.
to be honest.
Yeah.
Like, I'm watching these very dialogue. There's a lot of dialogue in this game, like, more than other Pokemon games. And it feels antiquated that you're just, like, sitting there in silence as, like, these characters are having this long drawn out conversation. And it's like, just talking about, like, Final Fantasy X, it's like 20 years ago we got, like, we had scenes with voice acting and everything, and it's like, I know the voice acting wasn't great back then for a lot of times. Hey, I will defend that scene. It was meant to be awkward. It was a character that was trying to make the girl he had an awkward crush on laugh, and he did it. He did it successfully. It was a time where she was very, very, very stressed out, and he was like, hey, I know how I can make this feel a little bit better and also get her to kind of like me, and that is just to make a fool of myself. And he did it, and she laughed, and look what happened.
You know
she fell for him.
That's fair, Brian. I will give you that. I think I have to wave my white flag. You're right.
You have to remember, these are, like, teenagers, so, like,
I think what's awkward about it was their mouth. Was the mouth animations. I think that's
absolutely, yeah.
I think that's the only part of it. I mean, I think laughing in any video game is awkward as hell, even in this day and age. Like, it's just hard to do right. But yeah, you're right. We got to give a pass to Final Fantasy X. It was a very long time ago.
I mean, we've only recently made it so kissing in games doesn't look like just, like, two random objects intersecting.
Yeah, they're like, hello, I love you. Oh, my God. So, yeah, that's always been a thing, too. And I'm not going to... Okay, I'm going to take a breath here because I'm not going to go down one of my rants. I love Pokemon so much. It's, like, one of my all-time absolute favorite things in this entire universe. But I think what I always get frustrated about, and everyone listening who listens every week, I know you know what I'm going to say, is I just feel like there's no real push for advancing, no real push for innovation, a real push, because there doesn't need to be, because these games always sell so incredibly well. We just saw that Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl was, like, what, number 4 for most selling games of 2021, which blew my mind. I mean, not really, but kind of did, and so that's always been something that I've been like, is this next game going to be the next, like, real innovation of Pokemon? And it sounds like, from what you're saying, it is a good step forward, but it sounds like there are still some things that need to be worked out.
I would say yes. Voice acting would be awesome. I know there's a lot of, like, Nintendo purists who are going to disagree with that statement, but I think that when they added so much story and so much lore doling out, I don't know what the best way to say that is, but they give you a lot of lore, especially later on in the game, about the Pokemon world. And there's long, drawn-out conversations with, like, multiple characters. I just think it would help to, even in just those conversations. Like, if you're talking to an NPC, like, you could take the Final Fantasy X approach, where it's just like text on the screen for that. But, like, in the cutscenes, like, it would add some impact to have, like, voice acting in that. And then also the digitized cries. sometimes feel a little out of place, especially with like the early generations when it was like just like Game Boy noises basically. And now
Oh,
like, it's weird to have like this. The game is utterly beautiful, but
is it?
that is only because of its art style. I think the art style is the sole reason that this game is beautiful.
Oh.
At times, it also runs like crap.
I was gonna ask about that because when we got the first trailer, I remember the frames look real bad, and I was like, God, the frames look bad. But Steimer and Andrew are like, no, it's fine. It's like, no, man, I'm like, something looks wrong about that. So
there's inconsistent frame rate.
Okay.
It's not terrible, but
Okay.
there are definite drops in frame rate when you're playing. There's low resolution textures, and there is a decent amount of like object pop in, especially in the environment.
Sure.
Like if you're like, especially when like you're using one of like the Pokemon that you ride on to like get through the area like faster, you're gonna notice a lot of that, especially if you use like the Braviary that you can fly like later on in the game. Like you're gonna be looking down, you're gonna be seeing like entire like forests popping in. And you're like, oh, okay. It's kind of like they're doing what they can with the Switch, I think. Like, I mean, I replayed Breath of the Wild last year, and it was like, oh, this runs worse than I remember. Like, maybe we do need a Switch Pro.
Oh, really? Because I was just gonna say, but I feel like well, then again, you're right, and I think that's the whole thing. And again, not gonna go down this, but I mean, I think there's so much potential with Pokemon, especially when you look at. I agree. I think the art style is really pretty, but when you look at the amount of detail in the landscape, just from what I've seen, right? I haven't actually played the game yet. It's like, man, like this looks pretty, but I feel like compared to what most other games look like in 2021, 2022, it just doesn't look as good as it should. And so do you think that's more of a Switch limitation, or do you think that's more of like a Game Freak just kind of like cutting corners a little bit because they know they can get away with it?
I mean, it might be a little bit of both. One thing that really caught me off guard when I went to Game Freak in 2019 is like, this is the highest grossing entertainment franchise in the world, and they've kept their team relatively small in terms of like AAA development. And we asked them about that, and they just seem to prefer it that way. And you know what? If that's the way that works well for them, they've put out, 25 years of really great games. Who are we to really judge them, I guess? But at the same time, like when you look at its contemporaries in the RPG space, it's like, oh man, like look at what like Final Fantasy is doing from like an animation perspective or a voice acting perspective or technical perspective. And again, Final Fantasy is running on, I guess, PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, were like the most recent like mainline Final Fantasy game. And then, the MMOs are on PC and PS5 and PS4, but like they have more powerful technology any way you slice it.
Sure.
At the same time, like the animations are better in Pokemon Legends Arceus than they are in Pokemon Sword and Shield.
Okay,
I will get that out of the way.
Okay,
whether you're talking characters or Pokemon, they are improved.
Oh, good. That's great.
Like, but it's still not on the level of like its peers in the genre, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, like it is a step forward, and I think that's worth appreciating. I think it's worth appreciating that we have a step in the right direction for this franchise. And I think a lot of things about Pokemon Legends Arceus, even the things that didn't quite land for me, like some of the story beats don't really land for me. Some of the characters didn't really land for me. But all of those elements are heading in the right direction, I feel.
That makes me happy, but also kind of like, I don't want, maybe frustrated, because that's kind of what I feel like I've been saying. We've all been saying, right, Brian? I mean, you've been a fan, I'm assuming, since like day one, right? Like you said, it was what got you into these sorts of games and whatnot. But
my birthday is Pokemon Day.
Really?
February 27th.
Well, now we can never forget it. We have no excuse.
It's funny. I was actually, when I was doing my Sword and Shield demo, the demoer was like, all right, yeah, the Switch asks you for your birthday, like at the start of the demo. And I was like, oh, that's weird. And I put February 27th, and he's like, oh, Pokemon Day. And I'm like, no, that's actually my birthday. He's like, what?
Oh, that's so cool. Oh, wait, see, it was meant to be. It was a match made in Pokemon heaven. No, I mean, I think hearing you talk about this is exactly what I expected, right? I think from, like, if I had to, like, predict, if I had to be, the predictor of the future, Nostradamus, if you will, and be like, all right, how's this game going to review? I think I would say people are going to like it. It's going to be fun. It's Pokemon. How can you not love it? I mean, that's like, as much as I complain about the lack of innovation in technical improvements in the Pokemon franchise. Like, I will always buy their shit day one because I love it. It's just like chicken soup for the soul. You know what I mean? Uh, I guess I would say, like, I think it's going to review well. I think people are going to enjoy it, but there's still going to be those issues that were like, but why? But why wouldn't you invest in, bringing on a bigger team? I think of, what was the team Nintendo brought on to do Breath of the Wild map? It was the same guys that did Monolith, exactly. But you know what? That's a conversation for another time. I told myself I'm not going to go down that path. But I kind of want to circle back a little bit to the story, because that's something I feel like we haven't really seen other than, like, you're filling out a Pokedex. Obviously, I know you probably can't talk too much about it for fear of spoilers, but is the story enjoyable?
I will say this. It is extremely slow in the beginning. Like, the beginning is when I was like, oh my God, they are just like dumping exposition on me right now. Like, they are just like explaining every little element of this world to me, and like telling me like, oh, you're part of the Galaxy Team expedition and you're doing this, and here, you need to do this now, and then you need to do this. And then, like, it was like, oh my God, I'm like 3 hours in. Just let me get to like the part that I've been seeing in the trailers where I'm like catching Pokemon, reporting back with like my findings, and then like going on another expedition. Like, just get me to that point. And once I did get to that point, I was like all in on this game.
Okay.
But like the early hours, it's just like, oh my God, like I can't sit through another conversation right now. And I didn't really care about the story at first. And then the later I got into the game, I was like, is this gonna like pick up, or like the stakes gonna get higher? Like, I'm kind of like, I was following the story, and like, but like the characters weren't really sticking with me that much. And then like there was a point in the story where I was like, okay, now I'm interested. This is cool. And it happens a little bit later in the game than I would like, but like it definitely did pull me in, especially towards the end.
Okay, that's good to know. No, I mean, none of this is actually surprising to me. I think I'm excited now more than I was to play this. I think, something I've always wanted from this series is more interesting story. And when you're talking about long cutscenes, or in terms of like long strings of dialogue or whatnot, that's something that I think is really cool too. Even though it's not voice acted, like I think there's so much potential there. I want to dive into the lore and the history of Pokemon, besides just a few blocks of text that we normally get from the other games. So,
well, that's what I really like about this, is it does give you a lot of that really cool lore and like what this world was like back before like the modern era of Pokemon. And I think this does a great job of that. And like the views that these people had, like, of Pokemon, like one of the cool things that I really like about this game is like, because there weren't like Pokemon trainers back then, there were like, there's people who like look down on the practice of like using Pokeballs. And there's other people who are like, oh my God, I am terrified of Pokemon. Like, they're like, I would say there are several people in this game that are just like terrified of the concept of Pokemon coming around.
Oh, that's interesting. Oh, cool.
So it's like interesting to see like how people react to like the concept of Pokemon being around back then, because it wasn't commonplace that everybody had like partner Pokemon on their belt that they could just throw out at any given time. Like, that was a very novel concept in the time that this game takes place.
Okay, cool. Now, see, that gets me a little bit more excited too. I see, the more you talk about it, yeah, I see what you mean when you're saying innovation, and it's expanding in a way that is promising. And hopefully, this will kind of take it to the next level in the next future games. So we have a question here from Sam Young, who says, regarding Pokemon Arceus, do you feel like the changes made to the formula will be in the mainline games going forward? So this kind of touches base on what we've been talking about, but yeah, do you want to answer it in a few sentences?
I really hope so, because I think that it would feel like such a step back. Like, even going back and playing Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl right now, as much as I'm enjoying those games, they feel so antiquated at this point. And I bet that going back to play Sword and Shield, which I haven't done since I played Arceus, God.
Take a shot. Take a shot every time he gets it wrong. I'm never going to get that right myself. Arceus. Okay.
It's years and years and years of having that drilled into my head, and then trying to correct it, and then still like being in my head about it.
It doesn't work.
I think it would feel weird if like Pokemon whatever and whatever comes out in 2023 and it does not use the advancements that we got in Legends Arceus, because just the like, I think that we're still going to get like the town to town like progression, even if that ends up being like segmented open world areas. But it would just feel so weird to have like the random encounters come back and not have everywhere that's not a town be like the wild area in Sword and Shield. And I think honestly, if you look at the expansions of Sword and Shield, I think those are almost tests for Legends Arceus.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah, I can see that.
Much in the way that people like will say that like Bowser's Fury is kind of a test for the next 3D Mario game. Maybe those expansions for Sword and Shield, the Isle of Armor and the Crown Tundra, because those were just 100% wild area.
Yeah.
Maybe those were Game Freak being like, hey, could we do this? Could we do a big open world? And maybe they learned some lessons that made them say like, maybe we should just do like segmented open world. And like, I don't know. I think it would be amazing if they could pull it off, like just have one sprawling open world, like maybe bring in Monolith, like you said, and
Yes.
help make it work. But we'll have to see. I mean, the Pokemon franchise is at, I think, such like a pivotal point, and like they've done it before. Where like that's the whole point of Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee was, all right, we're making the jump to console
Mm-hmm.
for the first time with our mainline series. Let's learn how to do it by just recreating the game that we started with. At least
Sure.
for this series. You know, they obviously made games before Pokemon, but with the Pokemon series, that's where it all started. So they recreated that with high resolution graphics and like additional features, better looking models and characters. And then they said, okay, we learned how to do that. We know how to make a console game now. They learned a lot of lessons in my conversations with them. Like they learned so many lessons from Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee. And then they carried that into Sword and Shield. And then I bet that same process happened with the Sword and Shield expansions, and they carry that into Legends Arceus. And then I bet they're learning things through Legends Arceus, and they're going to carry that into the next mainline game.
Nintendo, for the love of God, release a stronger console, please, so we can have these.
I would say it's going to happen in the next 2 years at the very most.
I'm 100% with you, and I'm like, who's to say that would, air quotes here, alleviate the issue? Who knows? But this has been just like utterly fascinating, and thank you so much for coming on and talking about it. Yeah, like I said earlier, I think I'm more excited than I was. I think I had the proper expectations all along. It's just really good to hear it from a fellow Pokemon fan who sounds like he's been playing since day one. So if people want to read your review, Brian, where can they go?
Go to GameInformer.com.
Ooh, are you excited to defend your review to the death? Does that still happen?
Oh God!
Do people still come for you?
This is one of those games because we're recording this before the review embargo,
Right?
Where I don't know. Like, there's some games where I'll write the review and I'll be like, I bet everyone else feels like at least similar to me. This is one of the ones where I'm very interested to see where everyone else falls on this one.
Isn't that so kind of nerve-wracking, right? I remember when
it is a little bit, but at the same time, it's like I know how I feel about it. I'm confident. Like I've put a ton of hours into this game. Like I've done the post-game stuff, which I won't spoil, but the post-game stuff is very good.
Okay.
I think some of the stronger stuff. So after you roll credits, be sure to stick around and keep playing.
Noted. Can you give us a ballpark of how much time you spent with the game?
This comes out on Friday, so
yeah, it does.
Yeah. So the game is out now. Including the post-game stuff, I'm approaching 40 hours.
Okay, hey, that's good. All right.
But like for rolling credits, I was just under 30.
Okay, cool. But yeah, going back to what you're saying, I know when God of War released, it was 2018, I think it was. I had my review already, my tweet all, and I was calling it a masterpiece. And I'm like, I hope other people feel the same way, because if not, this is a very bold claim. That it's just kind of a fun little insider look into what it's like to review games, is you never know. Because generally, when someone feels so different about something, it causes a, again, air quote, stir here within the industry, and people are like, well, this person from this outlet says it's this, and this person says it's this. But
Have you ever been like intimidated by a review game? Sorry, we're gonna break the fourth wall here,
Let's do it.
Or tear down the curtain. Have you ever been intimidated by a review game? Because I have one that like I was like scared to get going on before it was out.
No, maybe probably not, because thankfully, because what I do, I'm always really selective about what games I review, and I only really pick stuff I know I'm going to probably enjoy or something that's like right up my alley. But what's the game that you're thinking of?
Well, my answer is one of my favorite games of all time. If you give me like a top 10 favorite Brian games of all time, this is most likely on the list.
Okay.
Portal 2.
Oh.
I was scared to death that I was going to get stuck on something and there's no guides because I played Portal 1 and I played it maybe like a year after it came out. So I just go on game FAQs and like
Oh yeah,
if I got stuck on something, I could look it up. This was a game that wasn't out yet. So I was like,
dude.
oh no. Like, am I gonna get stuck and then like just be ramming my head against a wall for like 4 hours while I try to figure out this puzzle? I was like legitimately intimidated. I mean, this was again 11 years ago. So, because this came out in 2011. Yeah, because it was the same year as Skyrim and Arkham City. So, yeah, 2011. And I just remember.
Yes, I have definitely had moments like that as well. Where it's so funny, yeah, because you're playing a game for review and you're like, fuck, I'm stuck. Like, let me just go online and Google it. And you're like, oh, nope, you can't do that because no one else.
Yeah.
Most recently, I reached out to, I think it was Ryan McCaffrey, about 12 minutes. I was stuck on a puzzle. And that's always the worst, is when there's the puzzle and you can't for the life of you figure it out, and you have to privately message like people in the industry who are probably playing it as well. But then it gets tricky if you're not supposed to talk about the fact that you're reviewing a game. So it's like, hey, are you playing that game about time? Yeah. No, it's an interesting conundrum to be in.
I know that one of the ways that you can get around that is that in the time since reviewing Portal 2, I've learned this trick. You can actually ask PR about it, and they will ask the developers. And I've had to do that 2 times in my career.
Okay.
And I'm proud that I haven't had to do it more than that. But
12 minutes was the first time I actually had to reach out to the PR too, because I think Ryan was busy. He didn't get back to me right away. Totally understandable. But I'm like, what am I doing wrong? And it turns out it was some like obscure solution to the puzzle that I never would have figured out on my own. So yes, thank you, PR. We appreciate you.
Yes.
Saving our skins. But yeah, man, like I feel like I could talk to you about Pokemon forever, but I appreciate.
And I could talk about Pokemon forever.
I know, me too. This is fantastic. Like, you're my go-to Pokemon person from now on. I love it.
All right.
We'll have to definitely revisit this topic at some point in time. But
yeah, once you play it, I want to talk to you about it.
Absolutely, because I mean, again, I love my baby girl Andrea, but her eyes just get real glossy when I talk about it. She's such a good sport. She just smiles and nods and supports me, but I know she doesn't have any fucking clue what I'm talking about.
As every good friend should.
As every good friend should. I do need to talk about, and want to talk a little bit about what I've been playing. I'm still touching base on Nobody Saves the World, still making me laugh and happy. It's such a good, feel-good game. So definitely,
I want to check that game out bad.
It's so much fun, and it's just like the perfect combination of a good time. There's some mindless grinding in there, but there's some fun puzzles. If you want it to, be tricky, you can take those on, but you don't have to. It's just, I'm really enjoying it. But I've also been playing Uncharted Legacy of Thieves Collection. So, First of all, thank you, Sony Interactive Entertainment, for sending this code. Please don't sue me. Here's my disclosure. They did send me this code. I did not pay for this code. I am playing a review copy of a game. Brian, you know how we love our friends at Sony, but you know how they can be with their disclosures. So, now that that's out of the way. So this Legacy of Thieves Collection includes Uncharted 4, A Thief's End, and Uncharted The Lost Legacy. And this game is out the 28th, which I guess is today. When you are listening to this, hey, Pokemon and Uncharted. So there we go. So this is available physically and digitally for $49.99. If you do purchase the game or a variety of the games on PS4, I think there's a $10 upgrade fee you can pay to get it on some other, I don't know how it works here. Let me read it. Okay, here we go. Players who purchase Uncharted 4, A Thief's End, Uncharted The Lost Legacy, or Uncharted 4, A Thief's End, and Uncharted The Lost Legacy digital bundle have the option to pay $10 to upgrade to Uncharted Legacy of Thieves digital version. This is such a weird time where you have all these like cross-generational games, and it's like,
I know.
I'll be happy with, I mean, granted, I think supporting the older consoles is incredibly important because no one can get a new console anymore right now, but it just kind of makes this whole upgrading thing a little tricky, but there it is. So this new remaster on PS5 comes with DualSense haptic feedback, so if you're punching something, shooting something, you're driving a car, you're going to feel it in the controller. Faster loading.
Love the DualSense.
Oh man. I love it too. You know what the thing that the haptic isn't haptic. What's the controllers? What's the term?
Adaptive triggers.
Adaptive triggers. I think at times it feels so good, but then other times I actually have to like push hard to get it to do what I want it to do. I'm like, oh, I'm getting old. My poor fingers. What do I do?
So I am so excited about Horizon Forbidden West because the bow and arrow probably feels so cool. But I'm wondering how that's gonna feel when I'm like 30 hours into that game and I'm like, oh my god, I get it.
Right, and that's the thing, and I'm even seeing that in this game. One of my favorite things to do when I'm playing any games, I like to study the environment. I like to see what stories that, the little details tell. So I love pushing L2 and zooming in and like looking carefully at every little bulletin that's posted on a board or like what's on a desk. Longtime listeners will know my obsession with the toilet paper in Resident Evil 2 remake. It's a thing. But the problem with that is you have to really kind of push down on it. And it's kind of annoying after a bit. Granted, when you're shooting firearms, it feels very good. But yeah, that's kind of the thing I've been coming into too as well, Brian, is maybe I'm just old, but it's like after a while, I get it. It's a really cool feature, but I kind of just want to go back to the way it was. So I might eventually turn that off.
Yeah, that's the good thing about it is most games, if not all, give you the option to turn them off.
Exactly.
I've not gotten to that point with any game yet. I think Astro's Playroom, I always want to call it Astrobot Rescue Mission, but I know it's the PSVR game. Astro, the one that came with the PS5,
Astro
is awesome.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's just Astro's Playroom or something. I don't.
Yeah, you know what? It sounds good enough to me.
It's one of those games.
Yeah, they did a really fun job, like kind of really showing you what the technology is capable of. And I think it's really cool technology, but I don't think it's something that I can enjoy throughout an entire 30, 40-hour experience or however long Horizon's going to be. Thankfully, Uncharted isn't that long, so we'll see how long I last with it. But, there's a fidelity mode, there's a performance mode. You can transfer your saves over from PS4, which I did, and I realized I greatly sucked at finding treasures in this game. I think I only found 5 during my entire playthrough in was that 2016 that Uncharted 4 came out? Woo!
Yeah,
that feels like
it was.
Wow.
A different world.
Wow, a much different world. And, I'm maybe only 4 or 5 hours in. I did play this game when it originally released. And essentially the premise of Uncharted 4 Thief's End is Nathan Drake, or Nate as his friends call him, has settled down into a life of normalcy. And, of course, he gets sucked into a bunch of shenanigans and it's an adventure. We'll just leave it at that. And it's kind of like the climax of his story. And I think I forgot how much I really enjoy these games and how much pleasure and calm they almost bring me. The writing to me is so fun and witty. It's like watching a cheesy action flick. It's like,
I love it.
Me too. Absolutely. That's just it. I love it. I love the writing, the voice acting. I mean, you got Troy Baker and Nolan North. Of course, it's phenomenal. And those two just vibe so well together. And it just makes me laugh. It makes me smile. I'm putting it on baby mode because I don't want to deal with a struggle right now, a challenge. And I'm just having a good time enjoying the story. And I forgot how much I enjoy these games and how just, I don't know, almost therapeutic they are,
By the way, I think 4 and Lost Legacy are my 2 favorite Uncharted games.
Oh, really? Well, that's perfect then. Lost Legacy is really good too. That's the one with Chloe and Nadine.
Mm-hmm. Lost Legacy did not get the attention and love that it
not.
deserves. That game was so good. It carried on so much about what I loved about 4, even if it wasn't involving Nate, but
Right.
It was a really great story. They had the same great mechanics as 4. I think 2 is the only one that gives it a run for its money as the second best game in the series. But 4 is far and away my favorite game of that series. The intro where he's kind of living his standard guy life. He's
so good.
diving and trying to recover treasure off the shore of whatever city he's living in. And then just coming back to his wife every single night and playing Crash Bandicoot on PlayStation 1. That's so much fun. And then I won't spoil the ending for anybody who hasn't played it, but the final scenes of that game are among my favorite in any game ever.
I can see that. Yeah, it's a really good end to Nathan Drake's story. And gosh, I mean, I wish I could say, I can't say it. It's a fantastic series. If you've never played it before, if you've never played Uncharted, I highly recommend going back and starting from the first one. I think they're all wonderful games. And there's just nothing quite like it. So yeah, that's what I'm playing right now. I'm having a really good time with it. And I will probably talk about more of it next week after I've played more. But it's just as good as I remember. It's just... Those games are just...
I'm sure it runs much better too, right?
Oh, yeah. I should probably talk about that. Thanks, Brian. Yeah, no, it runs great. It's beautiful. There are moments where you look at it and you're like, God, it does not look like it came out in 2016. And granted, it has been improved, the graphics, and the loading times are nice and quick. But it's interesting because when you're in those cutscenes, you're like, God, it's so beautiful. And then it cuts to the actual gameplay. You're like, okay, there it is. There is that noticeable jump right there. But it still looks really good and it still runs really well. it's interesting because we don't really ever know what we have until like years have passed. And what I mean by that is, I bet if I were to go back and play Uncharted 4 on my PS4, right? That was a PS4 game. I can't keep track anymore. I bet I would be like, man, these loading screens suck, or like, oh, these graphics are kind of like meh, or it's kind of stuttery here and there. But at the time, I think we thought it was just amazing. And so that's why,
we absolutely did.
Right? And so now playing this new remastered version of it now, I'm like, this is just as I remember it. But I know that's absolutely not the case. Like, I know.
Well, that's the mark of a good remaster or remake, because it makes you feel how you did back then today. Because like, games age so much worse than any other entertainment medium. Like,
right.
You can listen to a song from the 80s and absolutely love it. You can watch a movie from the 80s and there's noticeable differences in how films were made back then, but you can still really enjoy it even without that sheen of nostalgia. Games, if a game came out in the 80s and you're playing it for the first time today, it really has to be something special in order for you to love it the way somebody who played it back then did, which is why a remake or a remaster of a game that came out a long time ago, even 2016 is a long time ago by game industry standards.
Yeah.
It has to achieve that delicate balance of being faithful to the original while also making it feel like it felt back then. And that's great that it allows you to do that. And it's the best ones make it so it's not even noticeable.
Exactly. God, you said it so good. It's like you do this for a living. It's like how to talk about video games. So no, you hit the nail on the head. It's
I'm learning slowly but surely, only 15 years in.
I know, right? We're all growing and evolving. That's what we're supposed to say. But no, it's lovely, having a really good time with it. And if you're kind of in the need of another Uncharted, some more Nathan Drake in your life, it's a good place to hop back in if you've already played it. If not, start with the first Uncharted. Still, I think it's a great game. I love it. Some people would say the first one doesn't hold up. I say they're full of shit, but that's just
by far the worst of the series, though.
By far the worst of the series, but I still don't think it's bad. Right? I think like to get the whole listen, Brian, if I can play Yakuza 3, if I can go from Yakuza 0 to Yakuza Kiwami to Kiwami 2 and hop into Yakuza 3 and 4 and 5, listen, I've played games that look like shit recently. Those games do not look good. They do not run good, but I still had a great time. It's for the story. It's for the characters. It's for the total narrative. Do your homework. Do your research.
I will say put Uncharted 1 on the easiest mode possible.
Yes.
Breeze through it. Just get through it for the story, as you're saying, and then really start the challenge with Uncharted 2, because that's a game that you want to experience every facet of that game. Whereas Uncharted 1, you just want to like establish the characters.
Exactly. Yep. You got it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that will do it for this very long hands-on segment. So much fun talking about Pokemon. But when we come back, we're going to talk to Brian about Brian. See you soon. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the What's Good Games podcast. Now we are going to talk to Brian about Brian. So, Brian Shea, you are, I'm scrolling up to the top because it's a fancy title, I don't want to get it wrong, senior editor of Game Informer magazine and the host of All Things Nintendo podcast. So I was looking a little bit at your All Things Nintendo podcast, and you're like, what, 17 or so episodes in right now?
Yeah, the 17th episode hits today.
Ah, so cool. Every Friday they come out, and I don't think you've skipped any weeks. I think you're just like...
Nope.
See, look at you. That is...
On weeks where there's nothing going on, like last week, I just did a retrospective on Banjo-Kazooie. So it's like, yeah, I mean, Nintendo is good in that way that like, there's always something that we can look back on, even if there's nothing that's like been going on. Like I was like, there's like 3 minor news stories and then like no major release. So it's like, I guess we'll just talk about Banjo-Kazooie because that came to Switch Online.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. And there's always, like you said, always something to talk about with Nintendo. I mean, I feel like that's what we've been talking about the majority of this episode. And I think for us, that love Nintendo and grew up with Nintendo, it's such a nostalgic spot that we can just literally talk for hours and hours and hours. So you picked a good topic. So is this technically a Game Informer podcast that you started, or how did that come to be?
It is. So, man, probably 2018, I originally pitched it as a column, like a written column, where I was just going to write a thing about like what's going on in the world of Nintendo, cover all the news, the biggest releases and all that stuff. And like just special topics on slow weeks, like I mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, oh, we don't really need any more columns right now. Like, let's put this on ice for the moment. And then, Game Informer's undergone a lot of changes since especially late 2019. We've had some upheaval. We've had some changes, new personnel and everything. And now, we kind of decided we wanted to expand out our podcast network. So we've always had the Game Informer show. It's one of the longer running video game podcasts in general, and that's undergone several evolutions as well. And we added two more late last year. I want to say both of them started in either September or October. So no, they were both in October. So mine is the All Things Nintendo podcast. Ben Reeves, who is our online content director, he does video gameography, which takes a long running series and goes game by game. And basically, like the first one he did was Metroid, and it just like the first episode was looking at Metroid 1, the second one was looking at Metroid 2, the third one was looking at Super Metroid, and just kind of dissecting why that game was important, the making of that game, and just going game by game in a series. Right now, I don't know if I think he might have finished the season 2, which was Halo.
Oh, that's a good one.
So he's just taking long-running series and going game by game, having different guests on to talk about why that game was important to them, important to the industry as a whole. It's a really awesome podcast. And then this week, our editor-in-chief, Andrew Reiner, just announced a new comic book podcast under the Game Informer umbrella called From Panel to Podcast. And he's just talking about all the goings-on in like the world of Marvel and DC, where it's like, and also independent comics, by the way. So like anything with like comic books, comic book TV shows, comic book movies, and anything adjacent to that. So that is a new one that is just starting up this week. And yeah, it's just kind of building out the Game Informer podcast network, if that's even an official thing. I don't think that is.
It is now, man.
That's what I'm going to call it.
I love it.
Yeah, there's a lot of really cool stuff going on with the podcast. For me, the whole point was that like the way I kind of see it is that anybody who has been a gamer aside from like the current crop of like new gamers that got into it because of Fortnite or something like that, like almost anyone who's been playing games for a good chunk of their lives Sorry, I can't talk now. We've been talking for a very long time.
We've had some whiskey. It happens.
And I've drank a very strong old fashioned. But anybody who's been playing video games for any like large chunk of their life has had Nintendo kind of cross into it in a meaningful way. Whether it's like, when I was in high school, I liked playing GameCube with my friends, and like we played Mario Kart Double Dash. All right, well maybe there's a Mario Kart Double Dash episode in the future of All Things Nintendo. Or maybe you fell in love with Pokemon like I did, and it's just almost anybody who is a gamer today or has been a gamer at any point in their life. God, I keep doing that. Any point in their life will have some sort of memory or some sort of experience or some sort of affection for Nintendo. And that was kind of the point of that. And I swear I'm usually much more coherent on that podcast.
Oh, man. No, listen, like Andrea and I have drinks every episode practically. It's our one time every week that she and I can just like be away from the kids. And we can be like, let's drink. But this is par for the course. Also, you sound completely coherent to me. Trust me. Like,
well, thank you.
You sound lovely. So with this episode, are you always the main host? You have guests that come on, or how does that work?
So I'm the host every episode. I produce it, I edit it, I record it, I host it, I do all of it, and then I have a different guest on every week. I mean, there's been some repeating guests, like this week's guest has been on, this is his third time on the show, but I love doing a thing to like kind of let the listeners get to know the person that I'm having on. If it's their first appearance on the show, I do a segment at the very beginning of the show, which is, it's a terrible name for it, but it's called First Nintendo Game, Favorite Nintendo Game.
I love
and
that.
And it's exactly that, where I ask them a question. Like, say I have you on the podcast, I'll ask you, Brittany, what was the first Nintendo game? The game that like made you fall in love with Nintendo as a company? And your answer would be?
Super Mario World.
Awesome answer.
Thanks.
That was the first Nintendo game I ever owned, by the way.
Same. Big same.
And
yep.
I think that was my answer. Like, my first Nintendo game was always like, I played Super Mario Brothers at an aunt and uncle's house. I played the original Legend of Zelda. Those were the first Nintendo games I ever played. And I was like, oh my God, I love this. But the first Nintendo game I ever owned was Super Mario World. So that was kind of my answer as well. And then the second part of that question, after we talk a little bit about that, is what is your favorite Nintendo game? Oh. And your answer would be?
Earthbound. Thought it out.
Oh, I think that was Kim Wallace's answer as well when I had her on.
She's lovely. We've had her on the show a couple times too, and we bond over the Earthbound. Oh, have you played it?
Yeah. I played it a little bit, but I never like played it any significant amount of time. Like so my dirty little gamer secret is that I didn't get into RPGs until Pokemon. which meant that I missed the SNES RPG boom for the most part.
Oh, so Pokemon like Red and Blue? Is that what you?
Yeah. So
Okay.
one Christmas morning, I think in 1998, I got a Game Boy Color with Pokemon Blue.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
then like a month later after I beat it, I went and bought Pokemon Red, beat it again, even though it was like the exact same game with different Pokemon in certain areas. And then like less than a year later, I was buying Pokemon Yellow at Walmart and like playing through that.
Yeah, it's that's so. There's such. Now I can't talk. I'm just getting so excited talking
I
about
pass it on to you.
I know I'm getting so excited talking about like RPGs on SNES, but no, like Earthbound, Super Mario RPG, like Breath of Fire, like so many classics that are on
Final
that
Fantasy
platform.
6 or 3, whatever it was called back then.
I can't keep that. I can't.
Final Fantasy 6 as we know it today.
Whatever the fuck. Yeah, I hear you. That's a really fun question though, and I feel like for people who grew up playing Nintendo or like you said, Nintendo has touched their lives. It is a fun little indicator. Like when I say my favorite game is Earthbound, there's a very select few people who like come out of the woodworks and they're like, oh my god, Earthbound, and then you instantly have that bond with them.
And I didn't expect that from you because I thought you were going to give me a Zelda game.
Oh yeah, I mean, A Link to the Past is on there too, but Earthbound is definitely like my all-time favorite. My very first RPG though was Super Mario RPG, and so
that was my first exposure to the genre. By the way, is I went over to a friend's house who had a Super Nintendo, which I also had a Super Nintendo, but I was playing like Super Mario World and Donkey Kong Country and Mario Kart. But I went over to my friend's house and he had Super Mario RPG, and I'm like, what does that mean? And I was like,
what's RPG?
And like I played the beginning of it, and I'm like, this is interesting and different from like anything I've ever played. And I played a little bit of it, and I'm like, that's really cool. And I never bought the game, which I regret now because I'm sure it's extremely expensive at this point.
Oh yeah, it's
but
not cheap.
The Pokemon Blue was the first ever RPG that I owned.
I mean, that's a good one.
And like played all the way to like through to the end.
Blue, that was my first too. My husband he's on Team Red. I said no, Team Blue is where it's at. So when we always joke about whenever our kid grows up and wants to start playing Pokemon, I said we have to do Pokemon Yellow. Like we can't make him play.
Meet in the middle.
Yeah, we have to be in the middle. We have to like compromise. That's what healthy relationships are based off of, Brian. Compromise. So Yellow is where it's at. That's awesome though. I hope you keep going with your podcast. I listened to a few episodes today, and like I said, it's like you've been doing this. It's like you have a knack for being on a podcast.
Oh well, thank you.
Yeah, no, you're really good at it.
If anybody's listening to this podcast and they're like, oh, I should check this out, the Pokemon Legends Arceus episode that came out today might be a little repetitive if you've been listening to this episode. So
maybe listen to it anyway. Listen to the
Banjo-Kazooie episode or something else if you want something a little bit different.
Give him a download. He deserves it. You deserve it.
Thank you.
And then also your fancy little title at Game Informer, senior editor. You want to just tell the kids what that means in a TLDR fashion?
Oh boy. So I joined Game Informer in 2015. And I was an associate editor. And then starting later that year, I took over the responsibilities of kind of overseeing the digital issue from an editorial standpoint. So we have our website, we have our podcasts, we have our print issue, which you can subscribe to and get sent to your mailbox every month.
Yes.
And then we have a digital version of that same issue. So it's the same content and everything. There's a few extras, a few additional things thrown into every issue. Like you can click here and it'll take you to a special thing, or there's videos embedded into the digital issue. I was basically in charge of kind of designing that and from an editorial perspective of saying like what content should be in it and everything, starting at the end of 2015. And then I was promoted to digital editor, which was like making that an official thing, like making it Facebook official, but professional official. And I had that up until last year when I got another promotion to senior editor, but I made the jump over from the online side of things. So we have two teams. I mean, we have some crossover between these teams, but we have two teams. One is in charge of running the online, like the website and everything, and the other one is in charge of running the magazine. And I made the leap over with this promotion from working on the online side to working on the magazine side. So now I get the chance to kind of, instead of running the day-to-day operations of the website, which we have some really great people on that side that they handle the news of every single day, and it's unbelievable to me like how they keep up with all the news, and like it's like whack-a-mole every single day where like they hit 3 things and then 6 more pop up, and it's like how do they even stay on top of this? But I'm over on the magazine side, which is very involved, and it's kind of a little bit of a slower pace because like, we have a month to put together our thing, but
Yeah.
there's always a ton of work to do. Like people, when I tell them like what my job is, they're like, oh, so you get to play video games all day. And I'm like, playing video games is a very important part of my job, but it's also a very, or maybe not very small, but it's a smaller than you would think part of my job, because putting together a magazine is a hell of a lot of work.
God, and it's so true. And even, as someone who also runs a podcast, I think a lot of people are like, oh, you just play games for a living. It's like, no, man, like we have to make the time we have to find the time to play the games. Like that's kind of like the catch-22 of this industry is like, I mean, speaking just for me, we have the show we have a show every week, and obviously there's always news that's popping up every week, so that we're always going to have content to talk about. But actually finding the time to carve out, especially these longer RPGs, to actually play the games, that's tricky and that's hard, but it's such an important part of your job.
It is, because like you have to like stay informed about like everything. Like a game that you are currently playing that you cannot talk about is a game that I am currently playing and cannot talk about as well.
Yeah.
And it's like, I really want to be informed with as many games as I can, even if I'm not the person who's handling the review of said game, So like a giant game that is said to take 500 hours is coming out.
Yeah.
I want to make sure I'm playing that, even if it's just during my free time.
Right.
And, a lot of that is the case, is like, I am playing this game in my free time. Even like if I'm on a review, I do get to use a little bit of work time to do that.
Sure.
But like the vast majority of my time when I'm like, quote unquote, on the clock is putting together the magazine and like, making like editing, like, senior editor.
Yeah.
That is an operative word in that position, is editor. And, making sure that things are all in order is very important, and making sure this magazine gets out the door every time. I mean, we just revealed our cover yesterday for our next issue, and it is extremely exciting for a lot of people. I guess this is going live on Friday, so I can say it. It is Elden Ring.
Oh, shit. That little game that no one cares about. Absolutely no one cares about Elden Ring. Wow, I'm being very sarcastic right now. So yeah, and I think that's really good to know. And we've talked about that a little bit on the show too, and like I was saying, when you have a podcast, you record the show, but there's the 20 minutes of prep beforehand to get the technology up and running. And then there's the hours of show notes and like news stories that you have to pull. Then there's the editing, and then there's the metadata, and there's the thumbnails, and then there's the social promotion. Like it's a fun little glimpse into what we do. And, all you see is the end result. You see the pretty thing, but you don't really get to see all the work that goes into it. Right.
That is the weird thing that I've come to like realize. I'm 17 episodes into all things Nintendo now, and it's like I have 5 days of work to like do all the stuff I need to do. Maybe a day and a half of that is spent getting this podcast out the door, even though it's only like an hour to 2 hours of like a podcast. And it's like, there's a lot of work that goes into this, like, especially since I'm a one-man wrecking crew in terms of like planning the show, doing the show notes, any scripting, any editing, any producing, like booking guests and everything. That is all like, that's me. So it's like, it takes up such a huge portion, but I also really enjoy doing it. So it's not like I'm complaining, but it's like, it's something I didn't think about when I was like, yeah, I'll do a podcast. That's awesome. And it's like, oh, wow, this is a lot of time. But again, like, I love doing it. I think it's really rewarding. I think it's something that I'm glad I'm doing, because it's a new professional challenge that like gives me something to look forward to every single week. And it was just an unexpected part of that, where it was like, I thought it would be like, all right, 1 day of work max on this thing. But no, like, by the time I write those show notes, record it, and edit it down and get it prepped up in our FTP to publish, it's like, oh boy.
Yeah, no, it's fun work, but I don't think people quite realize how much goes into it. But yeah, I mean, you're kicking ass over there. So always love seeing what you're doing. Absolutely. We have some fun questions from the community, and this one comes from Javin Mather. Brian, per all of your majestic food posts, what is a type of food or dish you haven't tried making yet but are interested in? So first of all, your Instagram account. What are you on Instagram? What's your handle?
I am at Brian Piche on Instagram.
Okay,
and
you
Twitter, but
post the most epic food pictures I have ever seen. Like, you make me hungry all the time, so I'm really curious to see what your answer is to this question.
Oh man. Well, I've been tackling some new stuff in the recent like year. Um, I would love to make pasta from scratch.
Ooh.
I haven't done that because I have a pretty small kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's the thing about my house is like I love my house a whole lot. Like, but the kitchen is incredibly small, which has kind of made me be really efficient with my space when I'm like learning how to cook and like I mean, I've always liked cooking, but like over the course of the pandemic, when I've been like stuck at home and like a lot of my restaurants were closed early on, it's like I'm gonna learn how to cook, and I've tried to like get better and better with it, and I've found that I really enjoy it.
You're really good
But
at
yeah,
it. I haven't tasted your food, but I see the photos of your food, and I'm like, that looks fucking delicious.
it's really rewarding to be like, okay, not only does this look good on a plate, but also like I made this and it tastes this good. Like I made a salmon rice bowl right before I came on the show, and it was so good. And like that's like
Ah.
one of my standards at this point because I make it so often. But like I don't know, I've been trying to experiment more with like Italian like Tex-Mex kind of stuff, and I just made like a Peruvian chicken dish the other day that I really enjoyed.
Ooh.
But like I don't know, like something. I think that making pasta from scratch would be something I'd really love to try.
Okay, well, whenever you decide to do it, please document it so we can all watch.
Of course I will. I mean, I'm a dirty millennial.
I know that's what we do, right? Everyone needs to know our
Exactly.
business. Robert M said, "Got any tips for a good selfie game?"
Oh God. Lighting is key.
Okay, he's right.
Lighting is key, and take a million and then only post one.
Isn't that the
One of them
truth?
is bound to be good.
Oh man, I think that's the truth. I think you see all these photos, like these excellent photos, but you don't see how many it took to get there. That's a little
Oh yeah,
secret.
it's like I'll post and then I'll be like, all right, I'm just gonna delete. Like I do like the thing on my
Where
iPhone
you
where I
hold and
select
you
a row
scroll.
and then go all the way up.
Yes.
Um, yeah, lighting, angle, like make sure like you're looking in the right spot because like it's easy to like, you don't want to like have the thing like I hear a lot of people say is like they have like their phone below them, and that's always a really
Oh.
bad angle. Like you want it eye level or above or slightly above, and also know like your good side. Like
Mm-hmm.
this is like sounding really weird, but like yeah,
No.
like I know like which way to like kind of slightly tilt my head to make it so I don't look weird because I have a slightly bent nose because I broke my nose playing football.
Ah.
Like literally the day before I was going to college freshman year.
Oh no
So
shit.
that was fun. That like my first appearance at college was with like a thing on my nose,
That's
like to make it
awful.
because they just rebroke it.
Oh man.
But yeah, so like I know like the slight tilt of my head to make it so that nose bend isn't extremely obvious.
Mm.
But yeah, lighting is really key. Having a good phone because like that's like I don't know, like having a competent phone is important, I guess.
That's a good
You don't need to
point.
have like I buy like the new iPhone every single time they do like the big camera upgrade just because I like taking pictures when I travel and everything, which hasn't been
Sure.
a whole lot lately, but it has been some. Like I went to LA for the Game Awards. I went to San Francisco for a Dying Light 2 event. It's like I like
Oh
taking pictures of
man.
places like when I go there.
Yeah, of
Um,
course.
it's funny because I did buy the iPhone 11 Pro back in 2019 because I was like, oh, I'm gonna be traveling so much in 2020. I want to make sure like I get like really great pictures. This is right when I got back from Tokyo, and like I had good pictures, but I didn't have like great pictures. I was like, oh man, I need to upgrade my phone to this iPhone 11 Pro. And then I
Yeah.
got like 2 more trips in, and then the world shut down. So
Yep. Isn't that how it works? The world's like, oh, so you think you're
I'd
good at
also bought a
travel?
brand new iPad because I wanted to like have a bunch of like space on my iPad for like movies and books and everything, and then that fell through as
I
well.
mean, you were prepared. At least you were prepared for a future that didn't exist, but at least you were prepared for it. You know?
Exactly.
There you
But
go.
yeah,
Okay.
get the lighting, get the angle, you're set.
All right, Robert. I want to see those selfies. Miranda wants to know, Brian, which Nintendo franchise do you think needs the most work to be successful in the years to come?
Hmm. There's one that I actually think doesn't need as much work as Nintendo thinks it needs, and
Okay.
that's Star Fox. I think Star Fox could take
Oh.
a back to basics approach. I actually talked about this on an episode of All Things Nintendo recently, where I think Star Fox Zero, if they brought it over from Wii U and got rid of like the weird second screen gimmick and motion control stuff that they had that felt shoehorned in,
Yeah, yeah.
if they just put that out as like controlling like Star Fox 64, I think Star Fox Zero would be a hit.
Okay. I've
They
never
need to go
really
back to
dabbled.
basics with that series.
Okay, see, I've never really dabbled in Star Fox. Like, it's just never been something, again, space shit, not always my jam.
Play Star Fox 64 on the N64 catalog at some point. Like that was my jam back in the day.
Okay.
Man, I think that this is a weird answer, but like, if the Metroid series had continued getting like releases at the same cadence that like Zelda and Mario had, I think we would be saying Metroid is the game that needs to be reinvented. But because it became like such an oft requested thing, like, oh my God, we want a 2D Metroid game for like 20 years or 15 years, whatever it's been since Fusion. I think that we would be sick of the 2D Metroid format, and we would be like, oh, we need like a new Metroid game, like a new style for this series. But like, I think that the answer probably lies somewhere in a franchise that we don't think needs a reinvention. Like, look at Breath of the Wild. Like that, nobody thought that Zelda needed to have like a radical reinvention. But then Breath of the Wild comes out and you're like, oh my God, this game is incredible. Like, it's like you said earlier in the show, it's not like a traditional Zelda game by any stretch, but it does carry forward the feeling that the Zelda games gave us back in the day. And it's still undeniably a Zelda game, regardless of like the changes that are made. And it's the old saying that like Steve Jobs used to say of like, people don't know what they want. You have to tell them what they want. And
yeah, okay.
I could come out and say like, you know, Star Fox needs a back to basics approach, or and like,
what about Donkey Kong? How do you feel about that?
Donkey
franchise?
Kong, I think that if we got a new Donkey Kong Country, like carrying on what Tropical Freeze did and what Donkey Kong Country Returns did, I'd be all on board with that. I think that if we got a 3D Donkey Kong that wasn't Donkey Kong 64, I would be psyched out of my mind.
Dude, could you imagine?
And I think that's a good answer, honestly.
Donkey Kong, we bring back the DK rap.
But we're getting a perfect answer to this question in Kirby and the Forgotten Land.
Yes. Wow. Yeah.
Because that is a radical reinvention of that franchise. And I think everybody who's seen it, even non-Kirby fans or even people who just had like a passing interest in Kirby, are like super on board with that game. Like, I think that game looks incredible.
You're right. What was the last Kirby game that came out? Was it
not Epic Yarn, Rainbow Curse?
Rainbow, whatever it was. I know when
Star Allies. Star Allies.
Okay. I'm thinking of
Switch.
Epic Yarn. That's when I'm thinking
Epic Yarn was Wii.
Yeah. Oh fuck. God, you're right. So my dad and I played Kirby Superstar all the time together when I was growing up.
I loved it.
Oh, such a fun game. And I've always kind of wanted to go back to that magic. And maybe it was the last game that came out that he and I played, and we went back to it together. I'm like, oh, this is fun, you know. But seeing the new Kirby game in action, I'm like, man, like this looks really fun. Like really, I'm interested in this. I haven't really been interested in Kirby in a long, long time. But you're right. Like this is the answer to the question. It's Kirby and what they're doing with that.
I'm going to bring up a list here and see if I can come up with a better answer.
I love it. Let's see. What other Nintendo?
Oh,
what about Pikmin?
I've never been a huge Pikmin fan.
I mean, me neither. I've never played a Pikmin game in my life, but I feel like we haven't seen much of that franchise. Well, we haven't in a very, very
I'm going to say either Wave Race or Pilot Wings.
Wow. Holy shit. We're going there. Okay. Well, there you go, Miranda. There's your answer.
No, but the real answer is Kirby.
Yeah, that's
and
a good
we're getting
one.
it. We're getting it in less than 2 months. So like,
that's
exciting. Think that is the answer.
I think that's a good answer.
And Nintendo's answering the call.
Thank you, Nintendo. Keep it up. Keep the good work.
Although, I mean, if we Super Smash Brothers might end up being the actual answer, because it's like, where do you go from here? And
that's like, a really fascinating answer, because you're right. Where do you go from here? You have all the characters. You have all the stages. I mean,
like Super Smash Bros. Ultimate is by far my favorite entry in that series, and that series is one of my favorite my favorite franchises that Nintendo has under its belt or under its umbrella. If I'm mixing up things here, mixing up words, I think Smash Brothers might be one that needs a reinvention, because anything beyond a reinvention, if they just try to scale it back, it's going to feel like going the wrong direction, right? They would need to reinvent it unless they want to just keep building it to this unmanageable thing that it already kind of is.
Because I feel like Smash already has the multiplayer stuff down, and I don't know if anything really needs to be reinvented there. But like what I'm thinking of is an incredible like single player experience with Smash.
Oh yeah,
Right? Like
we've
incorporate.
gotten teases of that.
Yep, incorporate all the move sets for all of the characters, but make it like one streamlined narrative. I think that could be really fucking cool. I mean,
So there's a lot of people that love like the subspace emissary,
right?
but like we've kind of abandoned a lot of that. Like the spirits story that was in Ultimate was a little underwhelming and like just frustrating in a lot of ways.
Agreed.
But yeah, I think that would be really cool.
But that'd be so cool. So people who aren't really into like the fighting PvP, but it's like, but you can play all of your favorite characters. I mean, that would be such a monumental task to take on. But somehow tie together a story like that would be fucking incredible. Oh man, wow, huh? That's what.
But yeah,
Kirby.
Kirby's the answer.
We have this question from Zachary, and I have no idea what it means, but I'm hoping you do. Ask him, quote, Zach wants to know when he plans to shave his head and cut that dorky-looking beard, and when he plans to stop running away and box me already. Also, you have to pick which entire franchise must be deleted from history. Mario, Sonic, or Pokemon? What do you choose?
So Zach is one of Game Informer's favorite community members.
I love it. Okay.
Zach is awesome. He's actually a very key member to our Extra Life efforts, and like he does amazing things within our community. So I enjoy the little ribbing that he gives me every once in a while. Honestly, I'm looking at myself on camera because I haven't been on camera in a while. I might need to get rid of this beard like before we even record the Game Informer show tomorrow when I'm on that.
I don't think so. Or is it just too much? Are you not used to that much beard?
It makes my face look wide, but also it might be because the background is
the way you have to frame that. It gives me a chiseled jaw. See? See? Not white face, chiseled jaw. There we go.
And I was going to shave my head back when I had like for our Extra Life thing. We put our heads on like our hair on the line for like donations and everything. People can donate money for our Extra Life streams, and we'll shave our heads or we'll eat something spicy or whatever. Like we'll do different things for different donations. And I had my hair down to my shoulders this past Extra Life. And I was like trying to get people to donate money to get me to shave my head. I'm like, come on, it's like the most bang for your buck, and nobody would do it. So I'm like, all right, I'm gonna just go cut it off myself. So I cut it down to a little bit longer than it is now, and then I went and got it cut even shorter the next time. But I will not be shaving my head unless it is a donation to a children's hospital, which is our annual Extra Life stream.
All right, Zach.
So that's your answer right there, Zach.
Yeah. Pay the man.
And then the final part here, which franchise would be deleted from history? So this is difficult for me because these are three of my favorite franchises of all time.
Oh, see, Sonic would be gone instantly. Goodbye.
For you.
For me. Yeah, for me.
So Mario was my first like franchise that I was really in love with. Like it was the game that like I played so much of, and Mario has still to this day kept like an incredible level of quality that like, you know, Mario Odyssey, I think, is somehow the best 3D Mario game.
Okay.
And I don't know how that happened, because I thought, you know, kind of like Ocarina of Time, I never thought that was going to be topped for me. I thought that was going to forever be my favorite game of all time. And then Breath of the Wild came out. I thought either Mario 64 or Mario Galaxy was going to be my favorite 3D Mario game of all time. There was never going to be anything that tops it, because nothing would deliver that same wow factor that those games were able to give me back in the day. Somehow Mario Odyssey did that, and it's wild to me that that was even a possibility. So Mario is the safest one on this list. Then it comes down to Sonic or Pokemon, and I'm honestly leaning Pokemon.
Whoa, okay.
As important as that is to me, I mean, you can't see it because it's just off camera. I have 2 giant binders still full of Pokemon cards. I have my Pokemon Sword and Shield cover story framed on my wall right now. I have a movie poster that an artist reimagined Pokemon Red as a Hollywood movie poster.
What? That sounds
off
sick.
To the side.
Okay.
You can't see any of this because it's all off screen. But like, I have so much Pokemon. I have an entire shelf right here. I'm like tapping the display case with Pokemon memorabilia from all over the world.
I think you and I are the same person, Brian. Like legit.
I love Pokemon so much, but I think that's probably
maybe not.
That's probably the one I go with.
Okay. Wow. So
I mean, Sonic. So I got into Sega because my Super NES was packed away when my parents decided we were moving to Florida very briefly. and our house in Maryland sold like way faster than we thought it was going to. So we had to move in with my grandparents for like 3 or 4 months, which was like a 35-minute drive from my house. So they already took me away from all my friends. I had to ride with my parents to school every single day, like a 35-minute drive,
Wow.
while we waited for our house, my dad's new job in Florida to start. So I'm like, all right, well, you took me away from my friends, and then like at least I have my Super Nintendo. And my parents were like, oh my God, it's all the way in the back corner of your grandparents' basement. Like we put it in the wrong box and it's all the way hidden away. We're not gonna
Oh.
unpack all of our stuff just to get your Super Nintendo.
Oh no.
So what we'll do is we're gonna take you to BJ's Wholesale and we're gonna buy you a Sega Genesis. And I got
Oh.
Sonic 2 and Echo the Dolphin were the two games that came with my
Dude,
Sega
Echo the
Genesis.
Dolphin. Yes.
And because of that, like I didn't have any friends around that time because like I had friends, but like they were all at school and they were all 35 minutes away. So like I didn't get to see them very often outside of school. So like most of my days were spent playing Sonic 2. And then like eventually I got Sonic 3 and Sonic and Knuckles and then Sonic 1 finally when we were down in Florida. And it was like that was the only reason that I had both Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis. But because of that, like the Sonic series holds a very special place in my heart. And despite the Pokemon franchise taking over my life, like, 5 short years later, and like, I'm all in on the anime, I'm all in on the trading cards, I'm playing the games religiously. Like, I think Sonic may be a more important franchise for me in terms of like looking back at like important series in my life. Despite, I think that the Pokemon franchise has had more staying power with me, but like every time there's a new Sonic game, I'm like amped, and
Okay.
I've been let down sometimes, obviously, with like Sonic 06 and Sonic Unleashed. I love the daytime levels, but like the Werehog levels, I kind of hate. But like a Sonic Mania was like Christmas for me. Like I loved Sonic Mania. Like I think that's maybe the best Sonic game ever. And like it's weird for me to say that because Sonic 3 and Knuckles has been my favorite Sonic game ever. And I'm giving you a very long answer to this very simple
No, I
question.
love this. I love this because it sounds like, I mean, now I understand why you're answering the way you are. Sonic was there for you and you really needed it. And because of that, whereas Pokemon probably is more of like a luxury experience. Like it's a fun thing to do, but it didn't help you in that really like hard time.
I was established at like the place that I would eventually like when I think of like the house that I grew up in. I was established there when Pokemon came out. So like I had friends that I could go play with. I had a neighbor that I'd play baseball with or whatever and like
Got it.
Go sled riding with. But like I didn't have any of that stuff when I was stuck at my grandparents' house for a few months and Sonic was my friend.
Yeah,
So
no, I get it.
it would be hard for me like when you look at that as like an objective like all right, which series has like the sketchiest track record, it's probably Sonic. But for me, like in terms of like what means the most to me, Sonic is up there with Mario for me. And it's because Mario got me into gaming for the most part, like alongside like Zelda and Donkey Kong Country and everything like that. Those are the games that made me a gamer. But Sonic was the one that like kept me sane and kept me a gamer.
Yeah. No, I totally respect that. That makes a lot of sense. That's an
So
awesome story. Yeah.
I guess Pokemon, unfortunately, like I would never want it to go away. I mean, I'm talking about how my Pokemon cover story is right here. I also have like a limited edition, like 10 of 50 Sonic print right on the other side of the wall.
Oh, I have to show you this since you'll appreciate it. Hold on. So this is like my newest like favorite thing in the world. So.
Oh my God. So that's why you brought up Magikarp.
Yeah. Oh, and in my shirt. I don't know if you see my shirt.
I did. I just noticed it.
Yeah. So this is really cool. These are all made of energy cards.
What?
Yeah, so right now on YouTube, ladies and gentlemen, I'm showing Brian the thing I talked about last week with Andrea. It's the Magikarp piece, but it's all made of energy cards, so it's really cool. Anyway,
that is
because you know when you open a pack of cards, you're like, what the fuck do I do with all these energy cards? I don't know. I just collect them. I don't need the cards, the energies. You toss them.
By the way, speaking of Pokemon stuff, when I went to Tokyo, like Game Freak was unbelievable to go there and like hang out with Junichi Masuda and Shigeru Omori and like talk about Sword and Shield and like all that stuff. Like that was so cool. They have like a little like in their conference room that we were meeting in for the most of the day, they had like on one side it was like all like mainline Pokemon series collectibles and everything, and like they had every game, like Japanese version of the game laid out. And then on like the next shelf down, it was like I think they had a minifig of every single Pokemon.
What?
Which was unbelievable. And on the other side, it was all the spin-off games. So like Pokemon Snap, Pokemon Stadium, all that stuff. And it was such a cool, like just little like mini museum that we got to to go to. But I also got to go to the Pokemon Center in Tokyo, and it was so cool. They had a Mega Charizard statue in there. They had a Mewtwo statue.
I'm so jealous.
They had a real life Pokestop from Pokemon Go.
What?
That was really neat.
Oh my god, I want to go so bad. I want to go to Japan so bad. Ugh.
For one shining moment, I held the gym at the Pokemon Center.
Was that like your defining moment?
I was like, this is all I need in life now.
I have now achieved all that I need to in this life. Forget cover stories.
I've also done that at Nintendo of America. I've gone to Nintendo of America and I took their gym as well, but it was immediately taken back.
Hey man, but for a split second, it was all you.
But I do have the gym badge or whatever that you get when Pokemon Go, when you get like when you spin the thing and then you take it and you battle it enough times.
See, there's the proof.
But
no one can challenge you. You
exactly.
always hold on to that. Oh my god. Well, man,
it's like
Brian,
when I street passed Reggie.
For Reggie. I know I said this in the last segment, but I really truly do feel like I could just talk to you for hours. I feel like this could be like a 4-hour long show. Last week was our longest episode in a long time, and I think it was around 2 hours and 9 minutes, and that was with 3 people, and you and I are clocking in around like 2 hours and 10 minutes, and I think that is so fucking cool because we have just been vibing with all of the same shit. I am so happy you came on this episode to talk about Pokemon, to talk about what else did we talk about? I don't even remember. It's been 2 hours, but we talked about a lot of shit. Star Wars for one. It's all a blur. Yeah, and Zelda and all the things. It has been so much fun to have you on, and I cannot thank you enough. And before we move on to Andrea's interview, can you just kind of plug yourself and tell people where they can find you?
Sure. I'm at Brian P. Shea. That's SHEA on both Twitter and Instagram. Twitter, you'll probably get a bunch of stupid jokes, tweets about the UFC, and tweets about the games industry. Instagram, you'll get a bunch of selfies and food pictures, as these questions might. Every once in a while, a little bit of workout stuff. But yeah, mostly just selfies and food pictures. And then find all my work at GameInformer.com or in Game Informer magazine. And then also you can follow the Game Informer Instagram account at Game Informer magazine. And then, of course, all things Nintendo on your favorite podcast platform.
Oh my God. Kicking ass, Brian. You're kicking ass. Well, thank you again so much for coming on. Really appreciate you taking the time. This has just been literally a blast. And coming up, we have Andrea's interview with Rishi Chadha, who is Twitter's global head of gaming content partnerships, to talk to her about their findings from Twitter's 2021 gaming data. Interesting stuff. Stay tuned.
What's good, everybody? Andrea Renee here with a special interview. I am joined today by the global head of gaming content partnerships, Rishi Chadha. It's so good to see you. It's been so long since I've seen you in person.
Oh my God, it has been many, many years. It feels like lifetimes ago since the last time I seen you. Thanks for having me on today.
Absolutely. No, I was talking to one of your coworkers about how you and I knew each other because both Rishi and I used to work at Machinima way, way back in the day, which feels like a literal lifetime ago.
It really is a literal lifetime.
Man, over a decade now, which I think is just bonkers to think how far digital media has come since then. And, you know, you're working at Twitter now, and Twitter has continued to evolve in that time. And it still remains probably my favorite of all the social media platforms. And what's really interesting about what you guys are doing, particularly the gaming team, is you're really getting, it seems like, a lot more involved in the conversation, and it feels like there's a lot of movements kind of happening on Twitter, which I think is awesome. So you guys put out this data report not that long ago, and it had a bunch of really cool stats in it. And I really thought that it was interesting just how many different countries, particularly non-English speaking countries, were really at the top of the list as far as gaming chatter goes. Was that something that was expected from you to see so many foreign language countries on the platform?
So I would say if you go back a couple of years I started in 2017, and when we did our report then, the United States was the country that was tweeting the most about video games. But we've seen probably, I think in 2019, we saw a shift, and now like Japan became the #1 country tweeting about games. So I think what's been fascinating is watching how that shift is happening, and it's continuing to be a mainstay. So like the US has been #2 for the past couple of years. But I think overall, it should be no surprise that, I think what I like to say is gaming has no borders and the fandom is global. And so The list itself isn't a surprise, but I will say that what's been fascinating is the games that people are tweeting about, and then also seeing how, if you look at the games at a global level, you can see how much of influence those Asian markets have on that list, compared to, like, if you look at the list for North America or you look at the list in other places, it kind of changes quite a bit because of the games that people are tweeting about.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think there's a direct correlation, right, between what the top 10 games are and what the top countries are. Because I was looking at this list and I was like, man, there's games on that list that I have never even heard of. And obviously it's because there's, so many different countries that are up there. I think sometimes, particularly in the US, we kind of get into our own bubble and we forget just how different some of the gaming communities are around the world. Is there a particular country that you've seen really kind of have a surge in activity?
I would say it's been definitely Japan, Korea have been the big ones. We're also seeing Brazil moving up the list and is becoming one that we're seeing a big surge in conversation. The games, though, that they're tweeting about are quite different than elsewhere. You see some of the more traditional games down there, like League of Legends, Counter-Strike. We also have new games like Arena Free Fire on that list too. So it's a little bit different compared to what the global list looks like, and not as many console titles on that compared to some of the Western markets. But for the most part, we see it's pretty common to see like Animal Crossing, Genshin Impact, Fortnite, Minecraft, Roblox. Those are all popping up on a lot of different regions. And then you have some of the other games that pop up based off of what people are playing, like PUBG, Overwatch in Korea, and things like that.
Yeah, I think that's something that we as consumers in the US forget about as well, that consoles in particular have not made their way into many countries around the world, and that hardware is still very difficult to get, if not incredibly expensive to get, which is why I think PC and mobile are still dominating for platforms in those countries as well. And now it's interesting seeing Brazil, because I think Brazil has always had such a really strong gaming scene, but I think that they've been, up until recently, I don't want to say isolated, maybe insulated is the better word. Like they've really kind of had their own community, but now it feels like the spillover is really happening.
Yes, and we're seeing the fandom, whether it's the esports teams that people are tweeting about. Like now, if you look at that list, you've got Loud on there, Furia on there, and just so many other teams that are popping up on there that are coming from the market. So I think that fandom's definitely spilling over. And then games like Arena Free Fire are starting to take off as well. And we're seeing that they're getting popular in Western markets too.
Absolutely. Now, I'm glad that you brought up some of the other games on that list. What I thought was really interesting was seeing Minecraft. Now, we all know that Minecraft continues to be huge. It's in the top sellings for NPD all the time. But why I thought it was interesting, particularly for Twitter chatter, is because I don't consider Twitter a place where the youth are, right? When you think about social media platforms, and I think Twitter, I think people my age, maybe in the age category below me, and certainly people in the categories above me. But are there a lot more young people, like 18 and under, coming to Twitter, or are they already on Twitter and I just don't know?
There's a lot of them on Twitter, and I think on the topic of Minecraft, this actually is I'll give you a use case that we're seeing that's super fascinating. If you look at like the creators list that we shared, and we've got a lot of different Minecraft creators on that list, like Dream, and then you've also seen now there's like these other folks that are kind of adjacent to that cohort of creators. They've actually gone on to utilize things like audio spaces on the platform in a very different way than most traditional outlets have been using it. So like the IGNs of the world are using it to do, recaps around shows, or Jeff Keighley's doing post-event spaces. These Minecraft creators, they don't tweet about it. They don't share it. They just go live. They literally pop in and they fire up a space, and then they've got 20,000 people listening to them. So it's like all of the rules and conceptions you have of discoverability go out the window with these folks, because they have this really young and voracious audience that's really dialed into whatever they're doing and keeping up with them, and want to be engaged and have this massive super fandom around their content. So I find that there is a very young audience that's starting to come to Twitter, and they're really leaning on a lot of these creators and personalities, because this is a place for them to have a conversation with them in real time. And it's much more intimate than anywhere else they could be. Like it's not the same as the comment section on other platforms.
No, it's such a good way to describe it, intimate, right? Spaces definitely have that more intimate feeling, and I've been doing a bunch of them. I'm really excited to be part of the Twitter Spaces Spark program that you guys are doing right
Yeah.
now, and have been really enjoying some of the conversations that I've been having. And I love how I can just open the app on my phone and I can see other people that I follow hosting spaces, and it does have that ad hoc kind of vibe where you obviously are going to get some success if you do appointment viewing as well, right? But I think the kind of fun of spaces is that it does feel like you're just jumping into a conversation with someone, almost like you're on the phone. And even though video is clearly king still, and I love video, I also love that it feels more like a radio show, like almost like a call-in show. And I am super glad that you guys added this feature. Are you seeing a lot of spaces that are, more traditional? Like you had mentioned, Keely doing, an after show, or your IGNs doing watch longs. I feel like I don't see a lot of brands doing spaces.
It's definitely been more individuals and then outlets. I think what we're seeing when it comes to brands is they're tapping into other spaces. So they're partnering with an outlet or they're partnering with a creator to do stuff. That's where we're starting to see a lot of that. I think it's going to continue to grow. And I think brands are going to try and lean into the equity of a lot of the creators that are doing spaces and seeing how they can partner on that front. We also have things like ticketed spaces coming out, and we're testing that so that you can actually monetize those spaces. And I think that's where we're going to start to see brands try to tap in and provide value for being able to, for people paying for spaces. So I think that could be really interesting. And I think that's going to be the next evolution of it all. But for now, we've just seen the adoption has definitely been great. And people are using it as like individuals and just like editorial outlets. But I'm excited to see how that continues to evolve.
Yeah, it's an interesting idea in an era where concerts aren't really happening. Like, can you essentially hold like a live show, whether it be a comedy show, a live podcast, or a music, in a Twitter space through a ticketed event, and it kind of get the same experience, even though you can't be there IRL. Definitely interested to see how that space is going to evolve myself. I did want to mention another stat that's in your report talking about Q4 being the biggest for chatter for gaming in 2021. Now, we already mentioned Jeff Keighley's name, but of course, I think Q4 and video games, I think the Game Awards. Is that number the way it is because of the Game Awards?
One of the big contributing factors was the Game Awards. I also just think we saw a lot of chatter around big news happening, games coming out, excitement for upcoming games. All of those things were happening at the same time. We saw Halo come out during that time period and just the surprise drop of the game.
Oh, yes.
So I think
the multiplayer
a
beta.
lot of those things contributed. Yeah. So I think like just those surprises and those things happening. You also have, big esports events that are happening during that time, whether it's League of Legends Worlds or some of the grand championships happening then around Valorant. So I think just it's a compound of like, that's the time period where everybody's at home, they're tweeting about games, they're excited. You've got big events happening too. So it really does make for like the perfect storm for conversation that probably only gets rivaled around Q2, around E3. But like this was just a really, really massive Q4.
Well, speaking of E3, even though we don't know what's happening with E3 this year, it was the top tweeted event of last year, even though it was digital only. Now, I think it's interesting because obviously a lot of people like to, poo-poo E3 and be like, oh, it's obsolete. E3 is over. But it's like, well, is it though?
Yeah, I would say I think it's going to continue to evolve, and I do hope that it comes back in an in-person format at some point because
Me
I know,
too.
I mean,
I miss
like
it.
for both of us, we've been doing this for a really long time and been in the industry a long time, and E3 has been a monumental part of our careers, and it's a big important time in the year for us, and so I think we miss it in that sense of like being able to be on the, at the show, have the actual time to play with games, check out the experiences and the booths and everything that gets made during that time, and then see everyone in the industry that are our friends. So I think it's really great for all of that. And I hope we get that experience again. But I do also think that it's in this current format of it with this digital format, I think people are interested and people want to know more, and, there's still fandom around it. So while there can be naysayers and whatnot, I think people are very hungry for content around games and around gaming news during that time period, because we're all expecting that every year during that time. So for it to be gone is definitely, it's felt for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I I have always disagreed. I'm like you. I love E3. I don't want to see it go away. But hopefully, when we're out of this pandemic, all events can continue, not just E3. Have you guys seen that the pandemic has made people flock to the platform more, or has it made people retreat?
I'd say definitely, and I like the use of flock. It's definitely more people.
I didn't
have
even
been coming to
plan
the
that, I
platform.
swear.
I think we've seen just like it's been really great for that. More people are coming and tweeting about games than ever. What's been interesting is now I think we're seeing this. The trend is now you're seeing more people tweeting about games that you wouldn't expect to tweet about video games. So more traditional celebrities are talking about games, and there's these interactions that are happening nonstop on the platform, and even about gaming adjacent things like seeing Gordon Ramsay now tweeting about Twitch is like a fascinating thing to me too.
So weird.
It's all coming together and it's all meshing together, and I think that's what's really important to see about like a big testament to the platform is that while gaming has always been part of mainstream culture, it's becoming even more ingrained, and it's all happening on Twitter.
So, like, what do you guys think is next? What is the Twitter gaming team working on?
So I think a lot of it is still focusing on, I always say like gaming and or like Twitter in general is more than 280 characters. We have so many other mediums and spaces on the platform, whether it's video and short form video or audio spaces or some of the interactive functionality that we have. And now we're trying to think about also like what does monetization look like on the platform. So we've got monetization around short form video, but we also have things like what we're doing with tipping and then also with super follows and even ticketed spaces. So, I think the overall theme and focus is not just for gaming, but our goal is to make sure that the platform is becoming a place that any creator can look at Twitter as a complementary platform to build a business and to grow and engage their audience, in addition to whatever they're doing on a platform like a YouTube or a Twitch or a Facebook. So our intention is always to be very complementary to all these other platforms and allow people to really foster and cultivate and continue to have the conversations they want to have with their fans and their communities.
With the rise of platforms like TikTok and even like YouTube Shorts, I mean, obviously fleets, are a thing. Do you guys see more gaming content in short form video coming to the platform, or do you think that that's always going to maybe stay to the more endemic video platforms?
I think it's a different type of video that lives on Twitter, in my opinion, in that you go to a YouTube or a Twitch, and the watch time is really important, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like, I think everybody's been really trained to think about long form video, whether it's long form VOD on YouTube or live.
I know, but that's what's great about TikTok, right?
Exactly, it's like short form, right? And I think what's interesting though is like you have a lot of UGC content that's happening on TikTok, and I think separate from that, when we talk about like short form video on Twitter, I always like to say like we're very much like the home for highlights. So like highlight clips, whether it's the best clips coming from traditional sports or esports, or the best moments that are happening during an award show like the Game Awards. People are posting those highlights on Twitter, and then they can monetize it too. So I think that's what's really great to see is it's a different type of highlight clips that are being really focused on the platform that people can watch, and it's very complementary to all the other platforms and services out there.
Absolutely. So I'm curious, after looking at all the data that has come in, and I love looking at data, and I know the things that you made public is just like probably a sliver of the data that you guys actually have. Was there anything that surprised you when you looked back at 2021?
Surprised me. I think that it was really great to see the two lists. The esports athlete list was surprising because in the past, we see a lot more Call of Duty athletes on there. And so seeing that Call of Duty only had one at Scumpy on there was fascinating to me. It was great to see that other games like Valorant had more people on there. We had a League of Legends athlete on there, a Green Free Fire athlete on there. So that was interesting to see that shift of like, there's still a lot of people tweeting about Fortnite athletes.
Yeah.
While they may not be, we may not be thinking about Fortnite esports, there's a lot of people that are. And then separate from that, I think is how global the gaming creators list is becoming. In the past, I feel like we think, and we talked about this earlier, is just like how North American focused we think about creators, and we just assume that everybody in the world's thinking about the same creators.
Yeah.
When in reality, they're not. You have someone who's a Japanese creator that's not the most tweeted about personality on the list. And then you have, Europe really being represented in there, as well as Latin America. So I love seeing that. I'm hoping that we continue to see that trend. And I also hope that we start to see more, just more female personalities making that list too.
Yes,
just
please.
because I feel like it's pretty male dominant right now. And I think that's something that I do believe will change, because we're seeing so many great female gaming creators rising up. And so I really hope that list shifts a lot more in the coming year.
Yeah, I anticipate it will. I mean, obviously, as an all-women run outlet here at What's Good Games, we get questions about this all the time, about like, why are there not more? And I think a lot of it is generational. When I was coming up as a gamer, it was very like frowned upon to be a girl who plays games, and I love that inclusion and acceptance has really been in this new generation. And I just think it's going to take time for that, kind of propagation to happen. And I think it's also, more young girls and women looking at opportunities in esports in particular, and how, there's becoming more teams that are focused on recruiting women specifically. And I think that it's just gonna, hopefully, permeate over time, and we'll get to see a more diverse list in the future. But also, I think a lot of it is something that people don't talk about, is that a lot of women or gamers who identify as women or femme don't necessarily spend as much time in social media spaces discussing their gaming passions. And, that's something that we notice here at What's Good Games, that a lot of people who listen to our show are male. And there's nothing wrong with that, of course, but I think that's probably why the trends are the way they are, not only on Twitter, but on all the other platforms as well. So We'll have world domination someday, but it probably won't happen in the next couple of years, if I'm being honest. All right, well, I'm getting to the end of my time with you, and I have to ask you about the latest gaming thing that is all over my Twitter feed. Are you playing Wordle?
I am playing Wordle. I picked it up. I'm on a bit of a streak right now. So it's been like, I've been playing now for like a week and a half, or like 14 days, or 12-day streak now. So it's fun. It's how I start my day. And like, I literally wake up and it's like, I'm sorry I'm admitting this, but I'll do Wordle first and then I tweet about it. So that's my like,
of
little
course,
routine.
you got to tweet about it.
I used to check Twitter first, but now I'm playing Wordle first and then I share it on Twitter. And so that's my little secret, but it's a great way to just get the brain working and thinking, and just like, okay. And then after I do it, my wife gets up and I'll send it over to her and I'll be like, this is what my score was. Like, let me know what yours is. And so she's been able to get a couple like second tries recently, and I don't know what she's doing. I think she's like secretly cheating, but I'm also confident that she's just getting really lucky.
No, I'm telling you, if you guess the first word like really strategically, I mean, and nobody knows what the strategy is, right? It's just a guess. You can get those second guess tries. That happened to me recently with the word that was proxy. I think that was like 3 or 4 days ago. And I guessed snowy as my first word. And I feel like if I hadn't guessed that, I probably never would have gotten proxy in 6 guesses. But I love how people kind of rally around these things, and Wordle's the biggest thing on Twitter in my at least in my feed right now. I feel like everybody that I follow is playing.
It trended worldwide today. Today's Wordle actually trended worldwide. It made it in the top 30. I'll leave you with the one crazy thing was when the day it was Shire. The day before, we literally just finished watching all the Lord of the Rings. We did the whole trilogy in one day. Next day it was Shire, and I just guessed it, and then it was like, what the hell's going on? Is Wordle listening to what I'm doing now? Like,
I love it. It was funny because so many people were mad about Shire, and then somebody else in my feed was like, don't forget, this is made by a guy from Britain, and all of the provinces in Britain are called shires. And I was like, yes, sometimes you got to remember it's in the UK. But Rishi, thank you so much for taking time to chat with me. It's always so fascinating hearing inside the platforms. I think sometimes you guys kind of feel like you're faceless corporations. And, particularly for the gaming branch of Twitter, I think a lot of people forget that you guys are doing all of this cool stuff. So if people want to learn more about what you guys are doing in Twitter gaming, is there a place where they can go?
Yeah, follow at Twitter Gaming, and feel free to just follow the timeline and see what's going on over there.
Awesome. Well, thanks again so much, Rishi. Enjoy the rest of your day, and good luck on your next Wordle.
Thanks so much, Andrew Renee. Great to see you.